Hey guys, tonight we're setting sail into the grimy, chaotic and absolutely miserable world of historical pirates, and fair warning, you probably won't survive this. You might be picturing wild adventures, glittering treasure chests, and a talking parrot on your shoulder. But the truth? It's darker, smellier, and filled with more screaming than you signed up for. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and the current time in the comments. I love seeing who's up late with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with a mistake, or bad luck, or maybe just being in the wrong place when the wrong ship docks. You're probably a sailor already, working merchant routes or hauling cargo through the Caribbean. Life isn't good, but at least you've got a rhythm. But then, a shadow appears on the horizon. A black flag, or maybe just a ship that looks like it's barely holding together but still moves like it's possessed. You don't get a chance to panic before cannon fire slams into your hull. Splinters fly like razors. Your captain's sheen screams, and then they board. Pirates aren't gentle. They scream curses, wave rusty cutlasses, and fire pistols that smell like burning metal and gunpowder. You don't fight back. Most don't. You drop your knife, raise your hands, and hope. Maybe they'll let you live. Maybe you'll get lucky. But lucky means something different out here. The luckiest get press-ganged, dragged onto the pirate ship, shoved below decks, and told their crew now, say goodbye to your old life. You've just been forcibly recruited into one of the most brutal jobs on Earth. They strip you of your clothes. Those belong to the pirates now. You're handed a crusty shirt, some pants that barely fit, and a pair of boots that squish when you walk. You're now part of the crew, which mostly means scrubbing decks, taking orders, and never questioning the guy with the biggest hat. Some men beg to join, hoping for gold and freedom. You didn't get that choice. You're still shaking from the attack when someone smacks you on the back and calls you green meat. It's not a compliment. Your first night aboard is miserable. The ship rocks endlessly like it's trying to fling you into the sea. You sleep on a damp board in a room that smells like mouldy bread and sweat. Someone near you is snoring so loud you think they might be dying. You're hungry, but you can't find the kitchen, because there isn't one. Just a guy called Cookie. Cookie, who boils random animal bits into something that smells like defeat. You're starting to realise this isn't an adventure. It's a trap. Historically, many pirates were forced into service this way, pressed into piracy after their ship was taken. A famous example is Captain Kidd's crew, many of whom claimed they were forced to join. Once aboard, refusing to participate wasn't much of an option. Saying no often meant being tossed overboard, or worse, and there was no polite resignation letter. The pirate life was for life, or until something sharper ended it. The pirate ship has its own rules, of course. Once you're officially in, you're expected to pull your weight, or else. There's no room for slackers or complainers. That one guy who moans too much, he's tied to the mast and whipped until his back looks like lasagna. You keep your mouth shut and your head down. You learn fast, or you suffer. And then there's the weird part. Despite the violence and chaos, pirate crews had a twisted sense of fairness. There was something called the Articles of Agreement, a kind of pirate constitution. Everyone got a share of plunder. Decisions were often made democratically. The captain could be voted out. It was like the worst job ever combined with bizarre workplace equity. Except your co-workers smell like dead fish and solve disputes with daggers. But don't get too hopeful. That share they promised you, it comes with a catch. You don't get anything until the next successful raid, and no one's promising when that will be. For now, you're just a body helping the ship limp through hostile waters, and trust me, those waters are full of things that want to kill you. Hurricanes, naval ships, other pirates. Even your own ship seems determined to fall apart beneath your feet. There's a saying aboard, the sea takes what it wants. The guy who teaches it to you is missing 2 fingers and has a tooth that whistles when he talks. You ask what happened to his fingers. Bad captain, he says, and leaves it at that. Not everything about pirate recruitment is completely agreed upon. Historians still debate just how common press-ganging was. Some believe most pirates joined voluntarily, driven by desperation or enticed by the promise of freedom and loot. Others argue it was more often coercion, especially in the golden age of piracy, when men had fewer options and navies treated their crews like livestock. But in your case, voluntary it was not. You spend your days mopping, climbing, hauling ropes and pretending you're not crying. You're hungry all the time. Someone coughs blood near your hammock. The ship rocks endlessly, and you start to dream of dry land. Not even a beach, just solid ground that doesn't sway like a drunk man. You catch yourself staring at the horizon, wondering what would happen if you just jumped. It's a dangerous thought, but it won't be your last, because this is just the beginning. You're officially a pirate now, and if you think it's going to get better from here, oh, you sweet, naive little landlubber. There's a moment, maybe a few days in, where it finally hits you. You're never going home. Not really. Not to your town, your family, your bed with an actual mattress. That's gone. Whatever vague notion of escape you had is evaporating fast. You're miles from any coast, surrounded by criminals and living in a drifting coffin. The pirate ship is your new universe now, and everything you once knew is as distant as the moon. The thing is, you hadn't realised just how attached you were to land. You miss the weirdest stuff, like walking in a straight line. Grass, birds that don't screech, the taste of fresh bread, even the sound of distant church bells, the sort of thing you used to ignore, now haunts your memory like a lullaby you can't hum right anymore. The ship rocks constantly, and your legs never quite adjust. You stumble into walls, trip over ropes, and at least once a day you swear the floor is moving just to mess with you. Spoiler, it is. You find out quickly that privacy is a myth. Everyone's packed together below deck, breathing the same sour air, sleeping shoulder to shoulder on creaky boards or hammocks that reek of mildew. Conversations are always happening. Arguments, groans, muttered threats, dreams yelled mid-sleep. You've never heard so much snoring in your life. And the air? It smells like old cheese left in the sun, with a whisper of wet dog and a bold splash of sewage. If hell has a scent, it probably took notes from a pirate ship. You try to make friends, or at least avoid enemies. There's Peg-Eye Joe, who lost his eye in a bar brawl but insists it was a duel with a Spanish assassin. There's Knuckles, a hulking brute who collects other people's teeth. You don't ask why. And there's a guy called Whisper, who's always smiling and never says a word. He creeps you out. But it turns out you're the weird one for not having a nickname yet. That'll come, usually after something humiliating. Mealtimes are, let's call them formative. The ship's stores include salted meat that's more bone than flesh, hardtack biscuits with bugs baked in, and something that might have been pickled cabbage before it died. There's also rum, lots of rum, not to celebrate but to numb. You learn fast that everyone drinks not for fun, but to cope. The rations are so foul you find yourself jealous of the rats. They look healthier than to most of the crew. Fresh water is rationed, and it tastes like rust and regret. Washing, don't make everyone laugh. You're not bathing out here unless you count the occasional rainstorm, and even then you have to fight 10 other guys for a decent soak. Your clothes haven't been dry since you got here. Your socks are a biological hazard. You start to itch in places you didn't know could itch. Welcome to the glamorous life of a seaborne outlaw. Here's a historical gem for you. Pirates actually had some of the strictest codes when it came to sharing supplies. Despite their reputations, many crews kept careful inventory and were ferocious about rationing. Wasting water could get you flogged. Stealing food, death. On some ships you'd be marooned, left on a rock with a pistol and a single shot just in case starvation got boring. So no, it's not a buffet of rum and roasted pigs. It's more like the world's most dysfunctional summer camp run by angry drunks with knives. And then there's the chores. Everyone pulls their weight. That includes cleaning the deck with sand and seawater, patching sails while balancing on swaying masts, and scrubbing out the bilge, the lowest part of the ship where all the liquid waste settles. It's as pleasant as it sounds. You spend hours down there in knee-deep muck, scooping out sludge that smells like rotten despair. One guy down there with you says he saw a crab with 3 eyes. You don't know whether to believe him or to cry. Despite all this, you start to understand something strange. The ship is a world. A terrible one, but still, a system. Everyone has a job, a rank, a place. The captain barks orders and gets the best food. The quartermaster handles disputes and hands out punishment. The rest of the crew follows Hose and tries not to die. There's rhythm to it. A dark, sweaty rhythm that starts to worm its way into your bones. But you can't shake the loneliness. Out here, time is slippery. Days blend into nights, and you sometimes forget what month it is. There's no calendar, no real routine, just endless ocean and a horizon that refuses to come any closer. You start counting the stars at night, naming them in your head. You talk to the sea sometimes, out loud, just to hear your own voice. If the sea talks back, well, let's hope that's just sleep deprivation. Scholars still argue over whether pirates truly felt freedom the way modern minds romanticize it. Some claim the open sea gave them liberty, unlike anything the mainland offered. No kings, no taxes, no rules but their own. Others point out that being hunted by every navy in the world, stuck on a disease-ridden vessel with sociopaths, isn't exactly liberating. But to the average press-ganged sailor like you, freedom feels a lot like imprisonment, just with more screaming and fewer walls. One of the strangest facts about pirate life? Many pirates actually missed life on land not for family or peace, but for the simple comfort of being bored. Out here, you're either terrified, exhausted, or sore. Sometimes all three. You dream about boredom now, about a day with nothing to do but sit. That would feel like heaven. As night falls again and you curl up on your plank of misery, trying not to touch the guy drooling beside you, you find yourself whispering the same three words over and over. Please don't sink, because if this ship goes down, you won't last 5 minutes in the sea, and that would actually be a mercy. By your third week aboard the pirate ship, assuming you haven't been stabbed, thrown overboard, or crushed under a collapsing mast, you start to realise that the worst part of life at sea isn't the fear. It isn't even the violence, it's the food. Or what passes for food. Your body is already protesting, your stomach constantly growling like something's trying to crawl out. Every mealtime is a gamble and the house always wins. You line up with the rest of the crew, bowl in hand, hoping for something edible. What you get instead is a ladle full of brown-grey mush, with the consistency of wet ash and a smell that could knock out a goat. You don't ask what's in it. No one does. Asking questions is a fast track to being told to go lick barnacles instead. You spoon the stuff into your mouth and try not to gag. It's salty, sour, and chewy in all the wrong ways. You chew on something crunchy and don't investigate. That way lies madness. Then there's the hardtack. It's the official bread of pirates and a cruel joke invented by some sadistic baker back on land. These flour and water bricks have been in the barrel so long they've fossilised. You try to take a bite and nearly chip a tooth. Eventually you learn the trick. Soak it in water or rum, then suck on it until it surrenders. Except even then it comes with a special surprise. Maggots. Little white ones squirming happily inside the biscuit like it's a spa. Some guys pick them out. Most don't bother. Protein's protein, right? Fresh food is a fantasy. The fruits and vegetables vanished weeks ago. Meat is salted into near jerky and stored in barrels that smell worse than the bilge. Water is rationed so carefully that bathing with it would get you stabbed. You drink beer or watered-down rum instead, which means you're constantly buzzed, mildly dehydrated, and getting scurvier by the day. Not that you know that yet. The first signs are just bleeding gums and weird bruises. The fun part comes later. To make things extra festive, you've got a cook named Blacktooth who seems to take personal pride in making everything taste like regret. He's missing most of his teeth, including the ones in the back that make chewing possible. He uses a knife that looks like it was fished out of a volcano, and he seasons everything with something called ship's spice, which is probably just ground up rope and sea salt. He grunts at you if you ask for seconds, and he'll throw a ladle at your head if you criticise his stew. It still might be the most stable relationship on the ship. Pirates historically had a very real problem with nutrition. Their diet was severely lacking in vitamins, especially vitamin C. Scurvy was practically a rite of passage. Sailors' gums would swell and bleed, teeth fell out, joints ached, and wounds refused to heal. In advanced cases, the flesh on their legs would blacken and rot. And yet many crews didn't even know what caused it. Some blamed sea air, others thought it was punishment from God. You just know that your teeth feel weird and your gums itch. That can't be good. And then there's the booze. Grog, they call it. It's a mix of water, rum, and sometimes citrus if you're really lucky. Spoiler, you're not. The purpose of grog is less about enjoyment and more about killing off the bacteria in the water. It does the job. It also gets people drunk enough to forget how miserable they are, which is apparently an unofficial survival strategy. The downside is that everyone is slightly tipsy all the time, which makes climbing rigging in high winds, let's say, eventful. You find yourself craving strange things. Apples, fresh bread, cheese. You dream about cheese, not even fancy cheese, just a sad little wedge of anything that didn't come out of a barrel. One guy starts talking in his sleep about buttered toast. You cry a little listening to him. Butter. What even is butter anymore? Did it ever really exist, or was it just a dream someone wrote down? Food fights aren't playful here. They're desperate. Someone gets caught hoarding dried fruit and he ends up getting locked in the brig for a week. You didn't even know the ship had a brig. It's basically a cupboard that leaks, and the rats there have tattoos. The thief comes out thin, twitchy, and missing half an eyebrow. No one talks about it. But everyone glances at the food barrels a little more suspiciously after that. There's a strange psychological shift that happens after enough bad meals. You stop seeing food as food. It becomes fuel, a grim necessity. You eat what you must and try not to taste it. You chew without enthusiasm, like someone clocking in for a shift they hate. The joy gets sucked out of it, replaced with calculation. Will this make me sick? Will I regret this? Can I keep it down? Now here's a fun fringe fact. Some pirates believed that eating rats could stave off starvation, and sometimes scurvy. Rats, after all, ate anything, including spoiled fruit that still had traces of vitamin C. So yes, eating a rat could technically be healthy. There are stories, possibly exaggerated, of crews chasing rats around the hold like it was sport. On really desperate voyages, they'd be considered a delicacy. You haven't seen anyone eat a rat yet, but you've definitely seen some people eyeing them a little too long. As if the food itself wasn't cruel enough, the preparation methods are also delightfully medieval. There's no stove, just a firebox set on bricks in the galley, when it's safe enough to use fire at all. On stormy days, you're stuck with cold hardtack and sour beer. On good days, you might get boiled fish, but good luck finding the fish that doesn't taste like seawater and sadness. Scholars still argue about how much pirate crews actually suffered from malnutrition, versus how much was exaggerated in sailor legends. Some accounts mention thriving crews full of healthy, bronzed rogues as feasting on fresh seafood. Others describe them as skeletal wrecks, with bloated limbs and sunken eyes. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, though right now you're definitely leaning towards skeletal wreck territory. And the irony: despite all this misery, pirates had it slightly better than Navy sailors. Royal Navy ships rationed even more tightly, and punishments were harsher. On a pirate ship you might starve, but at least you can complain about it without getting whipped. Not that it helps. Tonight, you lie awake in the dark, your stomach doing gymnastics, trying to recall what a pear tastes like. Was it sweet? Juicy? Did it even exist, or are you imagining it? Someone nearby farts in their sleep. Another groans. You think about rats. You try not to think about rats, and once again you whisper into the dark, "Please don't sink." At first, you thought the worst part of this floating nightmare would be the food, or maybe the constant threat of death by cannonball, but no, you were wrong. So deeply, horribly wrong. Because now your gums are bleeding, your breath smells like an open grave, and the left side of your jaw is pulsing like it's drumming out Morse code for "kill me." You've got a toothache. And out here, that's basically a death sentence wearing a smile. There are no dentists on a pirate ship, no sterile tools, no reclining chairs with cheerful little bibs. What you do have is a guy named Gristle, who once helped yank a molar out of someone's skull during the storm using nothing but a rusted hook and a bottle of rum. He's now considered the ship's surgeon. Congratulations, you're in his care. He doesn't even ask what's wrong, he just squints at your face, mutters "rots deep," and starts warming a pair of iron tongs over a candle. You try to run, he grabs you by the collar and shoves you into a barrel to sit. You're given a stick to bite down on and a small slug of rum, which does absolutely nothing except make you feel like puking and panicking at the same time. The crew gathers around like it's a puppet show. You scream before the tongs even touch you. Gristle isn't gentle. He yanks, twists, then yells, "Hold him!" when you flail. There's a crunch, a pop, and then pain so white-hot it feels like lightning got lodged in your skull. Tooth problems were absurdly common at sea. All that hardtack and no real hygiene meant pirates' mouths were rotting disasters. Cavities festered, gums swelled, infections spread. There are journals from the time describing black mouths and jawworms, which sound made up but sadly aren't. The standard solution? Yank it out and hope for the best. Anesthesia, if it existed, was usually just rum and pressure applied to your chest so you didn't flail too hard. Occasionally people died from shock or blood loss. You're lucky you only passed out for a bit and woke up with one less tooth and the taste of iron in your throat. But that's just the appetizer. The real horror comes a few days later when the fever sets in. You're shaking, soaked in sweat, and your jaw has ballooned into a grotesque lump. The infection didn't leave, it just went deeper. Now it's creeping toward your brain, whispering sweet nothings of death and delirium. Someone says it might be blood poisoning. Someone else says you're cursed. No one offers an actual cure. You lie in your hammock, mouth swollen, drooling and muttering to yourself. And honestly, you're kind of impressed you made it this far. If it's not the teeth that get you, it'll be the limbs. See, pirate life is physically brutal. Every day you're pulling ropes, climbing rigging, lifting barrels and swinging onto decks during raids. All that action means injuries. And out here, injuries turn ugly fast. A twisted ankle, good luck walking, a splinter in the wrong place, that could fester into an abscess the size of a crab. And then there's the big one, amputation. Lose a finger or a hand and you're still considered lucky. Lose a leg and now you've got a nickname and a permanent limp, assuming you live through the soaring. You get your first amputation show 2 weeks later. A cannon misfires during a practice drill and blasts a guy's arm into spaghetti. He doesn't scream at first, just stares at the dangling mass of bone and flesh like it betrayed him. Then the pain hits. Gristle is called. Again. This time he brings out the kit, which is just a roll of bloody cloth, a saw that smells like rot, and a jug of really strong rum. The patient is strapped down, there's no debate. If the arm stays, he dies. If it goes, he might live. That's the whole decision-making process. No second opinions. The crew gathers again. You don't want to watch, but somehow you do. The saw goes through the muscle with a wet, crunching sound, and the screaming is so raw it echoes through your spine. When it's over, Gristle throws the limb overboard and wipes his hands on his pants. The man survives. Barely. He wakes up sobbing, then laughing. You're not sure which is worse. Historically, surgery at sea was a grim affair. Pirate surgeons, when they existed, were often just failed doctors or shipwrights who knew how to saw wood, and figured, how different can a leg be? They used hot tar to cauterize wounds and sewed you up with thread that had probably mended sails the day before. Sterilization? Never heard of her. If you didn't die from the procedure, you still had to survive infection, fever, and the fact that you were in a floating germ tank with rats chewing your bandages at night. There's an open debate among historians about how many pirates actually underwent amputations and survived. Some argue survival rates were surprisingly high, given the rugged nature of pirate medicine. Others insist that any success stories were exaggerated over time to build pirate mythology. Either way, if you go under Gristle's blade, you're not betting on science, you're betting on sheer dumb luck. And luck? She's not always kind, and you've seen the guy with the wooden peg leg? He walks with a thunk and a grimace and claims he used to be the fastest sailor on the sea. Now he spends most days polishing his leg with whale oil and telling anyone who'll listen how he once kicked a man off a plank. With the good leg, mind you. He's one of the few who laughs about it. The others, they stay quiet, like the sea took more than just flesh. You start brushing your teeth with a bit of rag and rum just in case. You pray you never get a splinter. You avoid Gristle like he's a ghost. You check your limbs every morning like they're inventory. Everything still attached? Good, you made it another day. Tonight, as the ship groans and the sea slaps against the hull like an angry dog, you lie awake again, staring into the dark, listening. To someone 3 hammocks over, cough like they're dying. And you think, this can't possibly get worse. You're wrong, of course. You thought pirates were lawless, wild, unhinged. And okay, some of them absolutely are. But here's the twist. Pirate ships have rules. Lots of them. More than you'd expect from a bunch of guys who can't spell authority without stabbing someone halfway through the word. They call it the Code, and you better learn it fast, because ignorance isn't an excuse when the punishment involves whips, knives, or a nice, lonely island where you can die of exposure and regret. The Code isn't written on fine parchment. It's not even nailed to the mast. It lives in memory and teeth-clenched whispers passed down like ghost stories with the blood at the margins. The first time you hear it, it's from the quartermaster, a scarred man with a voice like gravel and a nose that's seen too many arguments. He calls you and a few other recruits to the deck and runs through the basics like a schoolteacher who has already accepted your failure. Rule 1. Equal shares. Not exactly what you expected from a group of self-serving criminals, but pirates hate unfair captains more than they hate the Navy. When they take a prize, gold, food, weapons, whatever, it gets divided according to rank, but even the lowest deckhand gets something. No more of that you get paid in glory nonsense like back on merchant ships. Out here, everyone wants a cut, and God help you if you try to cheat. Rule 2, keep your gear in check. That includes weapons, clothes, and anything the crew depends on. Lose your pistol in a raid? That's 10 lashes. Let your powder get wet. 20. Forget to clean your musket. You might get tossed overboard just to think about it. The crew doesn't tolerate mistakes, because mistakes out here cost lives and loot. Rule 3, fight fair among yourselves at least. Disputes are settled by duel or vote depending on how much blood anyone's willing to spill. Some arguments get resolved with fists at dawn, others involve knives, a circle of chanting drunk men, and someone walking away with fewer fingers than they started with. The important thing is that once it's done, it's done. Carrying a grudge longer than a few days is suspicious, and suspicious people get watched. Watched people get eliminated. The code goes on. Lights out at sunset unless it's a special occasion. No gambling during a storm, no smuggling personal treasure aboard, and definitely, absolutely no sneaking into someone else's hammock, romantic or otherwise. That last one is especially enforced, and the crew seems unusually passionate about it. You suspect someone had a very bad experience involving a love triangle and a cannon fuse. Now here's the weird part, these rules, they kind of make sense. Pirate crews couldn't rely on the law, so they made their own. And unlike most naval officers, captains on pirate ships could be voted out. If the crew lost confidence, they held a vote and picked someone new, usually the guy who looks scariest with his shirt off. It's rough, but weirdly democratic. Historically, this system wasn't fantasy. Real pirate codes, like those of Bartholomew Roberts or Black Bart, were shockingly detailed. They covered conduct, loot division, punishment, even what music could be played on board. Some codes banned gambling entirely. Others required everyone to keep their cutlasses sharp at all times. The idea was to maintain order, not out of morality, but out of sheer survival. An undisciplined crew was a dead one. But here's where it gets dicey. Enforcement of the code? That's up to the mood of the ship. One day someone drops a dagger and gets a warning. The next, someone forgets to clean a cannon and ends up lashed to the mast with their back looking like shredded sailcloth. Justice here is more like a storm, random, loud, and full of things flying through the air. One guy, young maybe 17, gets caught pocketing a silver spoon after a raid. A spoon! The captain doesn't even blink. He orders the boy to be tied up and whipped 12 times in front of the whole crew. The kid doesn't cry, he just grits his teeth and takes it, blood running down his back like spilled wine. Afterward, he's untied and given a piece of cloth to bite on. Don't do it again, someone says, like that's going to help. You don't sleep well that night. Punishments vary wildly, the lash is common. Flogging leaves scars that never fade and sometimes kills, but there are worse fates. Marooning, a kind of pirate exile, is a favourite for traitors or major screw-ups. You get dropped on a deserted island with a pistol and a single shot, not enough to survive, just enough to make your own ending, if starvation, sun and madness don't do it first. And then there's keel hauling. You'd heard of it in drunken rumours, but figured it couldn't be real. It is. A rope tied around your chest and feet. You're thrown into the water and dragged under the ship's hull. Barnacles rip skin, water fills your lungs. If you come up at all, it's as a screaming, shredded version of yourself. If you don't, well, you become one with the sea. Luckily it's rare. Even pirates think it's a bit much. Some historians debate whether these punishments were as frequent as the legends say. Keel hauling, for instance, might have been more of a naval thing than a pirate tradition, and marooning, while well documented, may have happened less often than the stories suggest. What's certain is that pirate crews enforced their codes fiercely, partly for control, partly out of paranoia. Trust was everything, and once it cracked, the consequences were brutal. One of the more fringe details you learn is about articles' tattoos. Some pirates actually had parts of the code inked onto their bodies, especially the rules about shares and fairness. It wasn't just for show. If someone died in battle, their tattooed rules could help settle disputes over loot, or at least give someone something to read while looting the corpse. You don't have any tattoos yet, but you're starting to think maybe one wouldn't hurt. Just something small. Maybe, don't steal spoons! Oddly enough, the longer you live under the code, the more it warps your sense of justice. You start seeing things less like right or wrong, and more like smart or stupid. Morality gets blurry. Survival, on the other hand, sharpens like a knife. You do what keeps you breathing and hope your name never gets called when punishment rolls around. Tonight you hear whispers about a man planning to jump ship, not during a raid, just in the middle of the night, when he thinks no one's watching. He's sick of the code, sick of the food, sick of the noise. You don't know if he'll do it, but you lie awake anyway, wondering what happens if he does. Would they chase him down? Would they shoot him as he swam? Or worse, would they let him go and pretend he never existed? Either way, you're starting to realise, out here, freedom is just another word for following very specific rules or dying horribly. And tomorrow, there will be more rules to learn, and more people failing to follow them. You wake up to screaming. Not panicked, not terrified, but more like two drunks arguing about whose turn it is to shovel filth out of the bilge. It's still dark, probably just before dawn, and the air below deck is thick with sweat, old grog, and the unmistakable sour tang of unwashed bodies. You roll over and nearly tumble straight into a puddle of what you hope is spilled rum. Another day in paradise. There's no privacy on a pirate ship, none. Everyone sleeps, eats, pukes, and argues in the same cramped space. The smell is biblical. It clings to your clothes, your skin, your hair. You wash in salt water when you can, but that doesn't do much beyond moving the filth around in new creative patterns. There's a reason pirates don't wear white. They'd look like mouldy cheese after a week. And your crewmates, oh, they're a delight. A full cast of misfits and sociopaths, each more disturbing than the last. There's Rat-Faced Pete, who keeps dead seagulls in a crate for luck. There's Sissy Jack, who talks to his belt like it's a person. And there's Old Brody, who once pulled out his own tooth with a hook and now keeps it on a string around his neck like a trophy. You avoid them when you can, but there's nowhere to hide on this floating coffin. Eventually someone will corner you and start rambling about sea monsters, or how the moon is plotting against them. These aren't movie pirates. They don't sing sea shanties with perfect harmonies. They wheeze, they bicker. They cough blood and argue over dice games made up on the spot. Many of them are criminals who are too awful even for land. Murderers, deserters and drunks who got kicked off other ships. And now they're your co-workers. Your very armed, very unstable co-workers. One night you hear a thud in the dark. A fight over a missing knife. Someone ends up with a broken nose. The next morning it's like nothing happened. Except the blood's still on the floor and one guy's now missing half an eyebrow. Conflict is constant. Fights break out over stolen rations, cheating at cards, someone snoring too loud. You learn to sleep with your boots on and your knife under your hammock. Not that it would help much. Historically, pirate crews were a mixed bag of humanity's worst impulses. You would get ex-Navy men, escaped slaves, failed farmers, and thieves from every continent. Ships like Blackbeard's Queen Anne's Revenge were said to be floating Tower of Babels, with up to a dozen nationalities crammed into one rotting hull. Communication was mostly shouting and gestures, with a bit of shared profanity thrown in. If someone didn't like you, they didn't bother with gossip, they just made sure you slipped on the wet deck during the next storm. Yet somehow, despite all the madness, the crew functions. They sail the ship, they prepare for raids, they haul supplies, load cannons, and keep the ship moving. It's not order, it's survival instinct. Everyone knows that if the crew collapses, the ship sinks, so the rage and chaos get channeled into a strange sort of rhythm. You grow used to the screaming, the sudden bursts of violence, and the silent, grim camaraderie that follows. You may not like each other, but you all want to stay alive, barely. Here's something extra weird. Some pirates actually preferred life at sea because of this chaos. They liked that nobody asked about your past, that you could be a nobody one day, and the guy leading a raid the next. If you were tough, ruthless and loud, you earned respect, regardless of where you came from. There were even cases of black and indigenous pirates being treated as equals, at least more equally than on any land-bound society at the time. Not out of kindness, mind you, but practicality. Everyone pulls rope the same way when you're trying not to die. Still, there's a fringe belief among some sailors that the ship chooses who stays, that it eats the weak and keeps the wicked. A man who can't hold his liquor, who pukes at the sight of blood, who cries during storms. He's not long for this world. The sea wants hard men, or at least ones who can fake it. And some nights, lying in your damp hammock listening to someone cough their lungs out across the room, you wonder which one you are. One day you get paired with someone on deck duty, a guy called Elias. He's quiet, probably too smart for this life. He shows you how to tie a proper bowline and how to judge wind shifts by watching the sails flutter. He smells like old salt and bad choices, but he doesn't talk to his shoes or carry seagull bones, so you latch on. It's the closest thing to friendship you've found here. Elias tells you stories about a ship that went mad and sailed in circles until the crew starved, about a ghostly vessel that sails only in moonlight and sinks anything it touches. You don't know if he's lying or just trying to scare you, but his voice is calm and low, and you don't mind listening. He tells you the only way to survive is to be useful and be invisible. Not too good, not too lazy, just there. A face no one remembers when the knife comes out. That night you dream of being thrown overboard, not during a storm, just casually, like someone taking out the trash. You wake up drenched in sweat, and you can't tell if the moisture came from the sea air or your own panic. There's an ongoing scholarly debate about how much internal violence actually occurred on pirate ships. Some argue that the chaos is overblown. Crews had to function, after all. Others believe the tension was constant and explosive, only managed through the looming threat of violent reprisal. What's certain is that these weren't merry bands of freedom-loving rogues. They were volatile, desperate and tightly wound. The kind of men who'd stab you for looking at their hammock too long. You've started counting the days. Not because you think rescue is coming, but because you want to know how long you've lasted. It's your badge of honour now. Another day survived in this floating cage of screaming, coughing and threats muttered through broken teeth. You've gone from hopeful to hardened, from passenger to prisoner to something else. And somewhere deep in your bones, a question forms. You whisper it at night, when you're sure no one can hear. Am I one of them now? You barely sleep anymore. Not because the ship is loud, though it is, or because your hammock smells like a goat died in it, though it does. It's the night watch. Everyone's got to take a turn, and your turn comes more often than you'd like. You learn pretty quickly that night on a pirate ship isn't peaceful or quiet. It's teeth-gritting, nerve-grinding, eyes straining in the dark paranoia. It's you and a flickering lantern surrounded by the kind of blackness that makes you doubt your own shape. You're posted near the aft deck with a musket that might fire if you beg it. The lantern beside you swings with the rhythm of the waves, casting warped shadows across the rigging. The ship creaks and groans, a symphony of wood protesting its own existence. And then there's the sea itself, lapping, slapping, whispering against the hull. Sometimes it sounds like laughter. Sometimes it sounds like something breathing. You try not to think about that. Your job is simple. Look for ships and scream if you see one. That's it. Of course you don't want to see anything, because if you do, it usually means trouble. A navy cutter, a rival pirate ship, maybe a merchant vessel if you're lucky, and even that means cannon fire, blood, and chaos. Still, watching nothing feels like madness after a few hours. You stare so hard into the dark that you start seeing things. Lights that aren't there, shapes that vanish when you blink. One night you're sure you see a sail, a ghostly flicker on the edge of the horizon. You call it out, heart hammering. The captain looks. Nothing. You get mocked for the next 2 days. Sleep deprivation is part of the job. You doze in awkward bursts between shifts, waking up unsure what century it is. One day bleeds into the next, each one as grey and salt-streaked as the last. You start forgetting things, words, names, where you put your belt. Your muscles ache. Your eyelids twitch. You catch yourself talking to the mast like it's an old friend. You're not the only one. There's a guy called Henley who whispers to the sea at night, begging it to take him kindly. Another guy just stares at his hands, flexing them like he's not sure they're real anymore. Historically, pirate ships ran 24 hours a day, and the crew was split into watches. The night watch was grueling, not just for the physical strain, but the psychological toll. The dark was filled with threats, storms, reefs, surprise attacks, even supernatural fears. Pirates, like many seamen of the era, were deeply superstitious. Bad omens could be anything from a red sunrise to a bird landing on the mast. You learn these superstitions fast. You have to. The crew believes in them like gospel, and breaking one is a fast way to get yourself hated. Or worse. Case in point, one night a bird lands on the bowsprit. A black seabird slick with rain. It just sits there, staring. No one wants to touch it. Bad luck, says Whisper, who never speaks, except apparently to say that. The captain orders it shot. The bird exposed into feathers and blood, and for a moment, everyone relaxes. That is, until the storm hits. A freak squall, lashing rain, howling wind, sails snapping like whips. You spend 6 hours soaked, frozen, clinging to ropes that could yank you into the abyss. No one says it, but you all think the same thing. The bird cursed us. You don't even question it anymore. Sleep deprivation takes a toll in strange ways. One night you hallucinate. You see your childhood home, clear as day, floating just off the starboard side. You smell fresh bread, hear your mother calling your name, and you reach out and almost step off the ship. Someone yanks you back. No one says anything. Hallucinations aren't rare out here. They're just not talked about. A few of the older pirates admit they've seen mermaids. Not the pretty kind. These ones have bloated, dead faces and nails like fish hooks. One swears he kissed one once. He has no lips now. You don't ask for details. There's debate among historians about just how frequent hallucinations were among pirates and sailors. Some accounts describe vivid shared visions. Others dismiss them as exaggerations from sailors desperate to make their stories more exciting. But given the mix of bad nutrition, lack of sleep, constant fear, and potent rum, it's a wonder more pirates didn't completely lose it. Out here, reality gets slippery. And when you're alone with nothing but sea and stars, your brain fills in the blanks with whatever nightmares it can dig up. You start to understand why pirates believe in monsters, because something about the sea feels alive. It moves under you, whispers around you, punishes you without warning. You stare into it long enough and it stares back. Elias tells you about the sea eyes, a feeling that the ocean is watching. Sometimes, he says, it looks up at you and decides whether you're worth keeping. You laugh, then you realise he's not joking. One night you're paired with Elias again. The two of you sit side by side, passing a bottle of grog and pretending not to be scared. He tells you about a time he saw a green light on the water, just a flash, and then a sailor next to him was gone. No splash, no scream, just gone. Sometimes the sea takes one, he says, so it doesn't have to take all. You shiver, and it's not from the cold. You wish for sleep, but when it comes, it's not kind. You dream of sinking, gasping, clawing, screaming, of your body tumbling through black water while things slither past your ears. You wake up gasping, your hands gripping the hammock like you're still drowning. Someone nearby farts. The spell breaks, but the terror lingers. The night watch becomes a part of you. Your eyes adjust to the dark. Your hearing sharpens. You can tell who's sneaking grog from 10 feet away. You can tell when the weather's about to shift just by the tone of the creaking wood. You become, in a strange way, a creature of the night. Always alert, never rested, half real, half bull. Ghost. One of the more fringe facts you pick up is that some pirates believed their souls were tied to the stars, that if they died at sea, their spirit would rise and become part of the night sky. It's a comforting idea in a bleak, haunted sort of way. You start to look at the stars differently, not just as points of light, but maybe as people who'd had enough. Maybe someday you'll be up there too, just a pinprick of light over a cold, endless sea. But for now, you're still here, still watching, still blinking into the black, praying that you see nothing at all. Morning hits like a slap. You're only halfway through a restless nap when someone yells, "All hands!" and the deck becomes a stampede. You swing out of your hammock, groggy and sour, boots hitting the boards before your eyes are even open. The sky is dark, thick with clouds, and the wind has that sharp edge, like it's looking for someone to shove off a ledge. That someone, of course, is probably going to be you. It starts slowly, a groan from the rigging, the sails snapping too hard. The ocean, already never calm, takes on a new kind of rhythm, one that churns rather than rolls. The bow rises a little too high, then drops a little too fast. Somewhere deep in the ship, the timbers creak like they're complaining to the gods. That's when the rain begins. Not gentle droplets, no, this is a vertical river, falling in sheets so dense you can't see 5 feet in front of your face. And with the rain comes the real enemy, the storm. You're yelled at to help secure the sails. That means climbing. That means clinging to ropes slick with rain and salt while the ship bucks like a furious animal. Wind howls in your ears, your hands bleed from the lines, and your boots slide against every rung of the rigging. The sea throws spray across the deck like it's trying to scrub the crew away. Every wave slams the hull, shuddering the whole ship, making it groan in its bones. You lose track of time, could be 10 minutes or 2 hours. All you know is water, shouting and terror. Lightning cracks across the sky, closer than you've ever seen. And for a second, the entire ship glows in harsh white light. You see every crewmate in full silhouette, soaked, desperate, clinging, then darkness returns. Worse than before. Thunder follows, deep and ragged like a monster breathing. And through it all, you hang on. Fingers numb, eyes stinging, praying not even to survive, just to not fall yet. Storms at sea are the true crucible. Forget cannonballs and curses, this is the thing that tests whether you were built for this life. Historically, many pirate ships were lost not to battle but to storms. A bad squall could splinter masts, rip sails, and roll a ship like it was made of paper. The golden age of piracy wasn't just cutlasses and treasure maps, it was hurricane seasons and rogue waves. The Caribbean, especially, was notorious for sudden, violent tempests that sank vessels without warning. One guy near you slips. His scream is brief. He hits the deck hard, rolling, limbs bent in ways they shouldn't be. You think he's dead, but someone drags him below deck, shouting for the surgeon. You don't see him again that day, you don't ask. The storm gets worse. The captain barks orders that you barely hear. The quartermaster ties himself to the wheel. You see Elias shouting something, pointing, then vanish behind a curtain of water. For a moment, the deck is just you and the rain and the thunder. Then another wave hits, and you almost fly backward. A rope lashes your arm and saves your life. You cling to it like it's a lifeline, because it is. The water's rising now. The deck floods with every wave. Below deck it's worse, dark, crowded, and half submerged. Barrels float like bobbing coffins. The bilge is overflowing. Men scramble to pump water out, but it's a losing battle. Someone starts throwing cargo overboard, trying to lighten the load. You toss 2 crates yourself, not even checking what's inside. Could be gold, could be biscuits, doesn't matter. It's dead weight now. Eventually the storm begins to pull away, slowly. Like a beast losing interest in its meal. The rain eases, the wind slackens. The waves settle from monstrous to merely miserable. The sky remains dark, but it's no longer trying to tear you in half. You collapse on the deck, coughing up salt water, soaked to the bone and shaking with exhaustion. You survived. You don't know how, but you did. For now. But the damage is everywhere. The sails are torn, 2 masts cracked, 1 crewman dead, another missing. That last one, missing, is whispered like a curse. Not because they think he survived. No. Out here, missing means taken. By the sea. And if you believe in that sort of thing, and you're starting to, you don't speak his name for fear the ocean might hear and come for you next. One of the more fringe beliefs among pirates was that storms weren't just weather. They were punishment. For betrayal. For cowardice. For mocking the sea. Some even claimed they could feel when a storm was coming, based on the mood of the ship or the mood of the water. You're not sure what to believe, but it's hard to dismiss the feeling that the ocean has a mind of its own. A cruel, calculating one. Some historians say pirates were especially vulnerable to storms because their ships were lighter and faster, built for speed, not sturdiness. Others argue that pirates were skilled navigators and storm dodgers, masters of reading wind and wave, but either way, even the best ship couldn't always win against nature's wrath. Storms didn't discriminate. Rich, poor, pirate, navy, they took who they wanted. After the chaos comes the work, hours of repairs, climbing back up to patch sails, securing cracked beams, hauling drenched supplies back into storage. No one rests, not really. You move like ghosts, drenched and grim, eyes hollow. The man who died is wrapped in canvas and weighted with stones. There's no ceremony, just a nod, a lift and a splash. The sea gets what it wants, again. You finally sleep that night, if you can call it that. It's more like collapsing into unconsciousness, your body too drained to dream. You wake up hours later with your fingers still curled into fists, nails digging into your palms like you were still gripping the ship even in your sleep. And here's the kicker. No one thanks you. No one praises you for surviving, for climbing, for hauling, for not dying, because everyone else did the same, or didn't. This is just another part of the job, another nightmare you don't get a medal for. Out here, surviving a storm doesn't make you special. It just means you're still useful. So you stagger back to your duties with the rest of the half-drowned, half-broken crew. You eat something bland and terrible, you scrub the deck because there's always blood and grime to be cleaned. You refill the water casks. You try not to look at the empty hammocks. And as the wind picks up again and the horizon starts to ripple in that particular way, you catch yourself whispering a new kind of prayer. Not today, not again, please, not again. You don't really notice it at first. Your nose adjusts so fast you almost forget what clean air ever felt like. But then the ship docks near a port, just briefly, and someone opens a cask of actual oranges, and suddenly your whole body remembers what normal smells like. The citrus stabs you in the face like a memory, and that's when it hits you. You stink. Everyone stinks. The ship stinks. Everything on this floating hunk of death reeks in a way that feels permanent. It's not just the sweat, or the mildew, or the fact that no one's bathed in weeks except during rainstorms when they strip off their shirts and laugh like madmen. It's deeper than that. The ship smells like 1,000 sins baking in the sun. Rancid fat, unwashed bodies, rotting food, stale grog, dried blood, and something sweetly sour that you can't identify and definitely don't want to. Every surface is sticky, every fabric greasy. You touch a rope and your hand comes away smelling like salt and dead dreams. Below deck, the air is unbreathable. You have to duck your head, stoop like you're walking into a crypt, and squeeze between hammocks, swaying like meat in a butcher's shop. It's hot, even when it's cold. Damp, even when it's dry outside. You learn not to breathe through your nose. That's a rookie mistake. You breathe through your mouth, shallow and careful, and you pretend you're not inhaling 50 other people's exhalations. People try to help themselves, barely. Some chew cloves if they can steal them. Others wipe their pits with rags soaked in vinegar, which honestly smells worse than sweat. There's one guy, bless him, who found a crushed flower petal on shore sleeve and now tucks it behind his ear like he's some kind of perfume merchant. He still smells like a corpse marinated in rum. But hey, points for effort. You've stopped noticing your own stench. That's the worst part. You can't tell if your socks smell like mildew or just sadness. You sleep in the same clothes you worked in, bled in, threw up in. You can't even be sure what colour your shirt used to be. Yellow? White? It's grey now, stained with everything the sea has to offer. Your boots are permanently damp. You don't even want to think about what's growing in them. One day the ship passes close to another vessel, and you actually hear someone on the other deck gag. "By God, what is that?" they yell, covering their face with a kerchief. Your crew laughs. It's a badge of honour to them. You, though, you start to feel like your skin has become part of the ship. That maybe the stench isn't just on you, it's in you. Like the ship's infected you cell by cell. Historically, ships were hygiene disasters. Fresh water was limited, soap was rare, and sanitation didn't exist. Pirates sometimes did better than Navy sailors, if only because they spent more time ashore and were less bound by strict routines. But that didn't stop the spread of lice, fleas, and disease. Your body is a war zone now. You itch constantly. You've scratched your leg raw more than once. One guy found a worm in his sock. Not a leech, a worm. You pray it never happens to you. You haven't properly defecated in private since your first day aboard. The toilet, if you can call it that, is a plank extended off the back of the ship with a rope to hold onto. You crawl out there, praying the ship doesn't jolt, pants around your ankles, wind howling, sea beneath you like a giant mouth. It's terrifying. One wrong move and you're food for sharks. Sometimes you hold it for days just to avoid the trip that, of course, leads to its own horrors. Constipation, gut pain, gas that makes everyone around you threaten murder. One crewmate, Jory, brags he once spent 5 minutes on the plank in a hurricane. Says it was spiritual. You suspect he's got brain damage. And the smell isn't just bad, it's dangerous. Infection fester in damp wounds. Mold grows in clothes that never dry. Rats thrive below deck, feeding on crumbs and anything soft. Someone swears they saw a rat crawl into a hammock and nibble on a sleeping man's ear. He woke up, apparently, and tried to chew the rat back. You can't verify that story, but nothing would surprise you at this point. Fringe fact for you, there are recorded tales of ships being so rank that ports refused them entry. In the Caribbean, some port authorities demanded bribes just to let pirate vessels dock, partly because of their notorious reputations and partly because of their unbearable stench. You always thought that was exaggeration. Now you know better. You wouldn't let yourself into port if you were in charge. There's a scholarly debate over whether pirates had better hygiene than the average Navy crew. Some argue they did. Less formality meant more frequent dips in the ocean, more access to fresh water from stolen supplies. Others say it's wishful thinking. Life at sea was disgusting, period. And pirates weren't exempt. They just might have had more fun while rotting alive. And here's the grossest part. Sometimes the smell saves your life. You can sniff out infection before it hits hard. You recognise the rank musk of fevered sweat, the metallic tang of blood from a fresh wound, the sour milk reek of pus. You know when someone's dying by the way the air thickens around them. Your nose becomes a survival tool. Horrifying, yes, but useful. You find yourself fantasizing about just at a bar of it, maybe 2. You imagine scrubbing your scalp until your fingernails come away clean. You imagine stepping into a bath so hot your skin turns red and coming out smelling like something other than despair. One day, a crewmate finds a bar of soap hidden in a crate from a recent raid. He holds it up like a relic from a lost civilization. Then, in full view of the crew, he eats it. Thought it was cheese, he says. No one even flinches. Tonight, as the wind shifts and the smell of bilge and sweat wafts through the narrow passage where you sleep, you lie with your arm over your face, trying not to breathe too deeply. Someone farts 2 hammocks over. Someone else coughs a thick, phlegmy cough. The guy next to you mumbles in his sleep, "Please don't rot yet," over and over. And you think, I'd trade all the gold in the Caribbean for a clean shirt, dry boots, and 15 minutes in a bath. You know you'll get none of those, but still, you hope. You'd think the worst part of pirate combat would be the fear, the panic, the yelling, the chaos. And yeah, that's all bad. But what really gets you is the confusion. You imagine sword fights being elegant and cool, graceful moves, witty quips, maybe a flashy spin or two. Nope, not here. Combat aboard a pirate ship is a screaming, filthy pile of limbs, smoke, blood, and bad decisions. It's fast, it's loud, and it smells like burned powder and wet intestines. It always starts the same way. A ship spotted on the horizon. A tense moment while the crew squints at the sails and guesses, merchant or military. If it's a merchant, you might live. If it's navy, well, sharpen your blade and kiss your lucky charm. The captain calls for silence. Everyone crouches, hides, waits. You slip behind a barrel, heart hammering, palms slick. The order comes, raise the black. The Jolly Roger goes up, snapping in the wind. Sometimes that's enough. A lot of merchant captains will just drop their sails and surrender. Better that than face a horde of sea-drenched lunatics with pistols and wild eyes. But when they don't surrender, the cannons start. The noise is indescribable. You feel it in your bones more than hear it. A deep, concussive boom that shakes the whole world. The recoil nearly knocks the gun crews off their feet. The deck trembles under you, the smell of sulphur thick in the air. Splinters rain down like angry wooden wasps. You duck instinctively, even though you're not entirely sure from what. Cannons aren't accurate. They're not meant to be. They're meant to smash, to terrify, to punch holes in the hull or scatter enemy crew. You hear a screech from the other ship as a shot lands, followed by shouting. Your ship returns fire. You watch a cannonball miss completely and land in the ocean with a slap. The gunners swear like poets. You just try not to throw up. Then comes the boarding. Grappling hooks fly, ropes swing. Pistols are fired more out of habit than accuracy. You follow the crew across the makeshift gangplanks, or worse, you jump. You land badly, roll, scramble up in time to parry a wild swing from a man who looks just as terrified as you feel. It's not a duel, it's a brawl. There's no rhythm to it, no honour, just desperation. You stab at anything moving that isn't dressed like you. You get punched, bitten. Someone slams the butt of a musket into your ribs. You hear a scream nearby, too high-pitched. A boy. You don't look, you don't want to know. Pistols are mostly useless after the first shot. They're one and done unless you've got time to reload, which you don't. You've seen guys wield them like clubs, beating enemies with the barrel. Swords? Forget the sleek cutlasses from the stories. These blades are rusted, chipped, bent. One guy swings a meat cleaver, another uses an axe that still has bits of rope stuck in the handle. You fight with whatever keeps you upright. At one point you slip in something, definitely not water, and fall onto the deck. A man lunges at you. You roll. Your blade finds his gut. He gasps. You don't look back. You can't. If you stop to think, you stop to die. Historically, naval combat during the golden age of piracy was brutal and short. Most battles lasted less than an hour. Ships didn't want to destroy their prize. After all, what's the point of sinking something you're trying to loot? But the fighting was savage, hand to hand, the noise, the smoke, the claustrophobia. It broke minds as often as it broke bones. Pirates relied on fear as much as firepower. The black flag wasn't a warning, it was a promise. There's one moment burned into your brain. You're ducking behind a mast when you see the enemy captain. He's older, grey hair slick with sweat, eyes wild. He points a pistol at your crew's quartermaster and fires, misses. Your quartermaster returns the favour, does not miss. The man goes down, a neat hole where his forehead used to be. No drama, just collapse. You don't even hear the thud over the din. Eventually the fighting slows. One side breaks. This time you win. The enemy surrenders. Some drop their weapons, some weep. Some just sit stunned, surrounded by bodies and blood and ruined crates. Your crew cheers, but it's half-hearted. Too many bruises, too much mess. Victory doesn't taste like glory, it tastes like copper and vomit and smoke. And now comes the worst part, the looting. You help carry crates, sugar, rum, and maybe some gold if you're lucky. More often it's spices or tobacco or cloth. The injured are dragged aside, the dead are tossed unceremoniously into the sea. There's no time for mourning, no energy. You find yourself stepping over the corpses without blinking. There's a crew vote, what to do with the prisoners. Sometimes they're offered a choice, join or be set adrift. Sometimes they're just left. You don't ask questions anymore, you just do your job. Here's a quirky historical detail. Pirates often tried to avoid full-blown combat if they could. It was expensive, risky. Many relied on sheer intimidation, the flag, the rumours, the reputation. Blackbeard of Barsas himself would tie lit fuses into his beard to look like a demon rising from the sea. But when intimidation failed, things got ugly fast. You've now seen firsthand what ugly means. There's still debate among historians about how common combat actually was. Some argue it was rare, that most pirate ships won their prizes without a fight. Others believe it happened often, especially when facing stubborn captains or miscommunication. Either way, you now know that a single battle can change everything. People disappear, ships limp away, broken, and even if you live, you're never quite the same. That night you sit on the deck, blood on your shirt, your hands shaking. Elias sits beside you, a long gash running down his arm. Neither of you speak. You just stare out at the sea. It looks so calm now, like it wasn't just a battlefield a few hours ago, like it hasn't swallowed men and ships for centuries without blinking. You can still smell the powder, still hear the ringing in your ears. You touch the hilt of your sword and realise your hands won't stop trembling. You survived your first real fight. You don't feel heroic, you feel hollow. The smell of powder hasn't faded when you're summoned to the main deck the next morning. Your arms still ache from looting, your ribs feel bruised from where someone rammed into you with a musket butt, and your stomach churns with leftover fear. But none of that matters. There's another ship on the horizon. The spyglass confirms it. Sails wide, hull deep, likely loaded. You're not even fully done cleaning the blood from your last raid, and now the crew is preparing for another. This is the rhythm of pirate life, feast or famine. Either you're floating through empty waters eating mouldy biscuits and playing dice for buttons, or you're chasing down ships like a pack of rabid wolves hoping that they're full of sugar, coin, or at least something edible. The new target is bigger than the last, which could mean two things, more treasure or a worse death. The crew starts working the sails. There's tension in the air, not fear, not quite, more like hunger. The kind that lives in the belly and the bones, gnawing. Pirates don't raid for fun, not really. They do it because it's how they eat, how they stay afloat, how they avoid becoming the ones being plundered. You're caught up in it now. You've stopped thinking of yourself as a hostage. Somewhere along the line, you became part of the hunt. This new ship sees you early. The Jolly Roger goes up, but they don't stop. Instead, they start turning, running. That's the worst case scenario. Chasing a ship means time, risk. They might get away, or they might lead you into a trap. Either way, the crew doesn't hesitate. Sails are tightened, wind is aged, orders barked. Your ship surges forward with groans and snaps, like it knows this dance too well. The chase lasts hours, sun blazing, sweat pouring, every crew member pulling ropes, adjusting angles, navigating every gust like it's life or death. Which, fun fact, it is. You lean over the rail at one point, watching the sea whip past in streaks of white and blue. That's when you hear it, the distant boom of cannon fire. They're not waiting for boarding this time. They want to scare you off. You don't scare that easily anymore. Your ship returns fire, but the ranges pour. The cannonballs splash into the water, geysers of salt and noise. Eventually, the enemy gets close enough to see the whites of their eyes, panic-wide, darting. It's another merchant vessel, poorly armed, desperate, and this time they fight. The boarding is less chaos and more bloodbath. They know they're cornered. You know they've got cargo worth protecting. You lose count of the bodies, the screams, the brutal clang of iron. You're shoved, slashed, nearly thrown off the deck. You retaliate with the same ugly instinct that saved you last time. and when it's over, you're alive again. Panting, numb, hands sticky with someone else's blood. The cargo hold of the merchant ship smells better than anything you've experienced in weeks. Spices, molasses, even a barrel of lemons. Honest to God, lemons. The crew cheers. It's not gold, but it's survival. It's enough to buy another few weeks of not starving, not mutinying. Your quartermaster smiles with his teeth, what's left of them, and mutters something about a good haul finally. You're too exhausted to smile back. Here's where it gets complicated. After a battle like this, the loot gets divided. Shares are calculated, the code followed. The captain gets a double portion. So does the quartermaster. Specialists, like the gunner, the carpenter, the surgeon, get slightly more than regular deckhands. And you get your first official cut. It's not much. A few coins, a flask of rum, half a tin of cinnamon. But it's yours. And you realise that for the first time you've earned something not through labour, not through accident, but through violence. Historically, the promise of shares was one of piracy's most attractive perks. Unlike navy ships, where you might work for years without pay, pirates split the spoils after every successful raid. It was risky, sure, but for many, especially the poor, desperate, or enslaved, it offered a taste of control, even if that control came with a sabre and the constant threat of death. You learn in the days that follow that the spoils of a raid are only part of the reward. There's also status. Survive enough fights, and people nod when you pass. They stop calling you new meat. They invite you to sit in the shade instead of making you swab the deck twice. Elias claps your shoulder and calls you a proper dog of the sea. You don't correct him. But the flip side of success? Complacency. The ship grows fat with loot. The crew grows loud with drink. Fights break out over stupid things. Whose hammock is whose? Who stole whose dried figs? You spot one man threatening another over a spoon. A spoon? The energy shifts from grateful to greedy, and you start hearing whispers, not about enemies, but about each other. You catch wind of a plot, maybe not serious, but loud enough to reach the captain's ears. A group thinking they deserve a larger cut, that the captain's holding back. You don't get involved, but you start sleeping with your blade a little closer. Because the worst fights on a pirate ship don't happen between enemies. They happen between brothers. This is the rotten core of piracy. It's not just the fear of the navy or of drowning, it's the knowledge that even in victory, you're never safe. You sail with killers, and trust is always conditional. If the gold runs low, if the food spoils, if the next ship escapes, you might be the next one with a blade between the ribs. And yet, you don't leave. Not that you could, but even if you could jump ship right now, you wouldn't. You're in too deep. You've tasted what it means to win something with your own two hands, even if those hands are stained. You've seen the faces of the men who called you useless now nod in respect. You've held treasure and felt that strange hot satisfaction in your chest that says, I earned this. You don't know what that says about you. Here's an eerie fringe fact for you. Some pirates used to keep mementos from raids, not loot, something weirder. A splinter from a sunken ship, a gold tooth pulled from an enemy. One guy supposedly carried a cork from the rum cask that cracked during his first boarding, calling it his lucky plug. You find yourself looking at the hilt of your sword, wondering if this is now your memento. If this stained chipped blade means something now. If you mean something now. That night there's a feast of sorts. Spices from the raid are dumped into a massive pot of stew. Someone plays a battered fiddle. The crew drinks, laughs, howls. You sit on a barrel staring at your tin of cinnamon, debating whether to trade it for a dry pair of socks. You don't. You clutch it like a medal. You survived another raid. You made a little profit. You didn't get stabbed. You even got to eat something that didn't taste like barnacles. You should be proud, but all you feel is tired. You wake to shouting, but it's not the usual kind. No drunken brawl, no barking orders from the captain, no gaggle of grog-soaked idiots arguing over dice. This shouting is sharper, colder, low, urgent tones passed around the deck like poison. You pull yourself up from your hammock, bones still sore from the last raid, and catch the word that always means trouble, mutiny. It's whispered at first, then louder, more confidently. You hear it from Brody, who usually talks to his belt buckle. You hear it from Rat-Faced Pete, who hasn't bathed in living memory. Even Elias gives you a look, tight-lipped and tired, that says something's happening. You already know the rule. When people start going hungry or think the loot's being unevenly split, the knives come out. Not for the enemy, but for each other. The current captain, Boone, a man built like a tank with a voice like thunder, has led a dozen successful raids. But that doesn't matter now. Word is he skimmed off the top of the last haul, kept a few coins tucked away for himself. Maybe took a barrel of rum nobody noticed. Maybe. The thing is, he should have noticed someone would notice. Pirates don't forgive thievery, especially not from their own. The quartermaster, Grimharrow, isn't helping. He's supposed to be the balance, the voice of the crew, the guy who keeps the captain honest. But lately he's been less voice and more whisper. Rumour says he's in on the theft. Or worse, planning a betrayal of his own. Whether it's true doesn't matter. Once the seed's planted, it spreads. And on a pirate ship, trust is worth less than dry socks. Historically, mutinies weren't rare in pirate life. You might think pirates were all about chaos and anarchy, but in truth, their ships ran on a delicate, violent democracy. If the captain lost the confidence of the crew, he could be voted out or thrown overboard. Sometimes they just marooned him on the nearest spit of sand with a bottle and a single bullet. Other times they let the sea decide. Boone might be next. You don't want to pick a side, not because you're noble, you're just tired. But staying neutral on a ship where everyone is armed is like swimming with sharks and hoping that they respect your boundaries. So you listen, you watch, you fake interest in every conversation. You nod when someone complains about the captain, but you don't agree. You laugh when someone jokes about accidental drownings, but not too hard. You keep your hands clean, or at least clean enough. One night you're summoned to a quiet meeting below deck. A group of 10, maybe 15 gathered near the powder room. Elias is there. So is Sissy Jack, sharpening a blade while smiling at the floor. A man named Crimp does most of the talking, says the captain's lost his edge. Says it's time for new blood. Says the next ship you take could be yours if you just back the right crew. You stay quiet. Crimp looks at you, waiting. You nod, you lie. It's safer that way. The air changes the next day. Everyone moves a little faster, grips their blades a little tighter. The captain barks an order and no one jumps to follow. His eyes narrow. He knows. They always know. You wonder if he'll strike first. History's full of captains who got wind of mutiny and cracked down early. Hard. Blood on the deck, public beatings, executions without trial. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just pushes the crew to snap faster. But Boone, he does something unexpected. He calls a meeting. The whole crew gathers on deck. The sun is high, the air thick with tension and sweat. Boone steps up to the helm. He doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't threaten, he just speaks. He reminds the crew of their victories, of the treasure in the hold, of the Navy's ships you've outrun. He admits mistakes, too much rum taken, maybe a few coins gone missing. He swears it wasn't for greed, just poor judgment. He says you'll vote, no punishments, no blood. It's so calm, so unpirate that no one knows what to do. You vote. A scrap of cloth tossed into a barrel, black for keeping Boone, red for replacing him. You choose black, not because you like him, because you hate Crimp more. When the votes are counted, Boone wins, barely. Grimharrow smirks like he already knew. Crimp? He says nothing, just nods and walks away. But the next morning, Crimp's gone. Disappeared. No note, no witnesses, no splash in the night. Just gone. Some say he jumped. Others say Boone had him disappear. Elias doesn't say anything, just cleans his blade a little more thoroughly than usual, and so things return to normal. Oh well, more. But now every smile feels sharp. Every laugh has an edge. The crew is quieter, more watchful. The code still stands, but you've seen its limits. Democracy works here, but only until someone gets nervous, or ambitious, or bored. And you're learning fast that survival isn't about strength or speed. It's about knowing when to speak and when to vanish. There's an old superstition among pirates that you hear whispered now and then. Don't sleep near the ladder. It means you don't want to be the first one grabbed if someone needs a scapegoat in the night. You move your hammock the next evening, just in case. There's scholarly debate over how often pirate captains were deposed. Some claim it was rare. Most captains were too feared or respected to be challenged. Others point to accounts like those of Charles Vane, ousted by his own men for being reckless, or Edward England voted out for being too kind. The truth likely depends on the mood of the crew, the size of the loot, and the wind on a given Tuesday. As for you, you survived the mutiny that wasn't. But it leaves a mark. You've seen the cracks in the ship's foundation. You've heard the hunger behind friendly voices. You know now that the scariest enemy isn't the Navy or a storm. It's the man who stands beside you, smiling while he counts how many steps it would take to throw you overboard. There's a saying on the ship now, half joke, half threat. You ain't a real pirate till your teeth fall out. You hear it the first time when someone spits blood into a barrel, his gums looking like chewed velvet. The man grins, grimaces, and someone nearby mutters, "Ah, the scurvy's got him." Everyone laughs, but it's that brittle, tight kind of laugh that people use when they're trying not to imagine the same thing happening to them. You've stopped laughing at anything related to disease. Scurvy doesn't come on like a thunderclap. It creeps. First you bruise easy, then your joints ache, then your gums swell and your breath could drop a man at 5 paces. When your teeth start to wiggle, really wiggle, it's like your whole face is trying to fall off. You can't eat right. You can't sleep without biting your tongue. You mumble when you speak because everything inside your mouth feels like it's about to melt. You've seen men try to tie their loose teeth back in with string. You've seen men pull them out with their bare fingers. You do not want to join that club. The worst part, you know exactly why this is happening. Everyone does. You haven't seen a fruit since the lemon barrel ran out 2 raids ago. That tiny burst of citrus was heaven. Pure, acidic salvation. But it was gone in a week, and you're back to sucking salt and crunching biscuit beetles. The cook tried to pass off mouldy onions as a cure, but one guy almost choked to death when it squirted in his mouth like a rotted jellyfish. That was the last time anyone trusted the onion cure. Historically, scurvy was the bane of long voyages, especially in the age before vitamin C had a name. Pirates knew the signs, swollen gums, weakness, bleeding from places that shouldn't bleed, but they didn't always know the cure. Some guessed right with citrus or pickled vegetables. Others just hoped they'd raid a port before their bodies gave out. You're hoping someone finds a single blessed lime in a barrel of fish hooks. And then there's smallpox. Or maybe it's the pox, nobody's sure. One guy starts showing spots, then another, then another. Red bumps, fevers, shaking fits that make them gnash their teeth until the teeth snap off. They get isolated below deck, behind a row of barrels near the cargo hold. Someone sets up a ragged curtain, like that's going to fool the pox. The air down there starts to stink in a way even you haven't smelled before, and you've smelled things that would make a vulture cry. One by one, the sick stop moving. They get quiet. No screaming, no twitching, just still. Then after a few hours or maybe a day, their bodies are lifted in silence and slid off the plank with a single splash. No prayers, no coins over the eyes, just water. It hits you suddenly that there is no such thing as dying peacefully on a pirate ship. Every death is either loud and awful or quiet and suspicious. You can't get sick without someone eyeing you like you're contagious, like you might be the next reason they die. And if you are sick, you better hide it. A cough gets you side-eyed. A nosebleed gets you whispers. A bad fever? That's a rope around your ankle and a splash before nightfall. One night you wake up drenched in sweat. Your skin's burning, your legs ache, and your stomach is tight like someone's wounded up with a winch. You panic. You sick? Is it the pox, the scurvy, something's worse? You stumble to the deck, gasp in the night air and retch over the side. A shadow passes behind you. No one says anything. That silence is worse than yelling. You don't know if you are being watched or measured. You start chewing on whatever you can find, dried seaweed, till a bitter bit of root someone insists is medicinal, even the white, tasteless pulp from the bottom of an old barrel. Anything to keep your teeth in your head. You've started dreaming about oranges, not treasure, not gold, just a stupid, fat, juicy orange. You want to bite into it and let the juice run down your chin. You want the acid to sting your gums. You'd trade your hammock for one slice. Hell, you'd trade your sword. And then, one day, by some miracle, the captain announces you're stopping at a hidden cove to resupply. Not a port. Too risky. But a place known for fruit trees and fresh water. The crew cheers like children. You've never seen the grown men cry over a pineapple before. You see it now. As you approach the shore, the smell hits you first. Green. That leafy, humid scent of plants not yet rotted or salted. The crew practically sprints onto land. You're one of the first off. You run. Literally run. Into the trees, past the ferns, until you find a scraggly bush with something vaguely round growing on it. You tear one off. It might be a lime. It might be a mouldy potato. You don't care. You bite into it and weep. Actual, honest weeping. The juice burns your gums and tastes like a miracle. You pick a dozen more and shove them into your shirt. Others do the same, hooting like madmen, drunk on vitamin C and freedom. Of course, not everyone's lucky. By the time the ship leaves the cove, 2 more men have been buried. One from fever, one from a cut that turned black. The sea gives, and the sea takes. But you're alive. Your teeth are still in your mouth, barely. Here's a curious fringe fact. Some pirates believed that the pox was a curse passed by sirens. Sea spirits punishing men for plundering sacred waters. Sounds ridiculous, until you see someone covered in sores, babbling nonsense, and you swear you hear something whispering in the waves. You shake it off, but that night, you sleep with your back to the hull, ears covered. There's still debate among historians about how often pirates suffered from disease compared to other sailors. Some argue they had better access to shore, so they were healthier. Others claim the lack of routine medical care and wild lifestyles made things worse. Either way, one thing's for sure, a pirate ship was a floating petri dish. You might survive the navy, survive battle, survive storms, and still be taken down by a rotten tooth. And so, every morning now, you check your gums. You run your tongue along your teeth, count them like treasure. You watch the spots on your skin. You sniff the air, always listening for the telltale rattle of someone too sick to hide it. You tell yourself you're okay, that you're lucky, that you've got time. But you don't say it out loud, and you don't want the sea to hear you. You always thought the Jolly Roger meant fun. Black flag, skull and crossbones, maybe a little yo-ho-ho, and a parrot squawking for comic relief. Something from a storybook. But now, standing at the base of the mast, watching that ragged flag snap in the wind like a dare, you realise the truth. The Jolly Roger is not a joke. It's not a costume or a fashion statement. It's a threat, a warning, a confession. It says, we are monsters, and we're proud of it. The day starts clear, the sky a perfect dome of blue. You're trimming sail, thinking maybe, just maybe, you'll get through 24 hours without vomit, fire or death. Then the lookout calls it, sails on the horizon. You expect the usual scramble, the whooping, the rush, but something's different. The captain doesn't order you to hide, doesn't tell you to hold fire or sneak up quiet. He grins and says, run up the flag. You do it. You haul the rope, and the Jolly Roger unfurls. Not the one you're used to either, not the cartoony skull. This one's got a skeleton holding an hourglass and a spear, standing over a bleeding heart. It's terrifying. Even the paint is uneven, like someone carved it with their own fingernails in a fit of rage. And you realise this is a specific message. This one says, surrender now, or die screaming. That's the point of pirate flags. Every symbol has the meaning. Some signal mercy, others promise torture. Historical pirates used dozens of different flags. Hourglasses for time's running out, spears for we like violence, bleeding heart you for we enjoy watching you suffer. And the black background? That meant you might live if you surrender. Red meant no survivors. This flag is black, but there's a red smear across the skeleton's face that might just be old blood. The merchant ship you're pursuing sees it. You can tell by how they start turning, how their sails catch more wind. They're running. Your captain loves that. Says it makes the chase sweeter. The crew cheers like they're at a sporting event, not about to commit felony murder at sea. You stand back, clutching the rigging, trying not to look seasick or scared or both. And here's the nasty twist. The flag isn't just for them, it's also for you. A reminder, a contract. You sail under that thing, you agree to what it stands for, you become the monster. You're no longer someone who was forced aboard. You're not a victim anymore. You're part of the message. That shakes you more than the chase. When the ship's finally closed, the captain has the flag lowered halfway. You think it's a mistake until Elias tells you that's part of the show. Half-mast means we're mourning, Karius, he says. Usually for you. Sure enough, the merchant ship slows. You see people waving a white cloth. They are surrendering. No one cheers, not yet. You board with the others. The crew of the merchant vessel is lined up, shaking, eyes wide. Some have weapons, but they drop them quick. There's no fight in them. They've seen the flag, they know what it means. And still, just to make a point, the captain selects one man and has him dragged forward. We fly death, he says, so we have to mean it. The man is stabbed, slow and deliberate. Not killed, not yet. Just enough to show everyone else what's waiting if they don't behave. Blood splashes the deck. A few people weep. A child clings to her mother. You don't breathe. You don't move. You don't speak. Then, and only then, does the captain, Let the looting begin. Later, you ask Elias why the show, why the flag, why the need to terrify. Fear, he says, is faster than gunpowder. If they're scared enough, they don't fight. No fighting means no blood, no damage. Clean job, clean loot. He pauses. And sometimes we just like the fear. You wonder if he means we or they. You hope it's they. Here's a quirky fact you won't find in children's books. Pirate flags were often customised on the fly. Some were sewn from old sails, others painted with tar, pig's blood or red wine. There's one story of a pirate who nailed his enemy's ears to a flag and hoisted it just to see if it'd flap right. Nobody remembers his name, but everyone remembers the flag. Some ships even carried multiple banners to swap out depending on their mood. There's some scholarly disagreement over how widely used the Jolly Roger really was. The image of the skull and crossbones is so iconic it feels universal. But some historians argue most pirate-equipped ships either use plain red or black flags, or no flag at all until the last second. The Jolly Roger, in all its stylized glory, might be more myth than fact. Doesn't really matter to you now. You saw one today, and it changed things. The merchant ship is stripped clean. Crates of cloth, tobacco, a few chests of silver. One passenger, a girl with red hair and a sword at her side, is invited to join the crew. She declines, politely. The captain smiles, says he likes her fire. She's allowed to leave, and you don't ask what would have happened if she'd said yes. You return to your ship. The flag is still up. Tattered now, the wind chewing at the corners. You stare at it as the sun goes down, thinking about what it's become. Not a banner, a confession, a dare, a mask you wear so long you forget your real face. That night, someone paints a new symbol on one of the sails, a crude skull with burning eyes. You ask who did it. No one answers. No one has to. It's just the ship announcing what it is now, and what you are too. You lie in your hammock, eyes open, the flag burned into your mind. You wonder what would have happened if the merchant crew had fought back. You wonder what kind of person you've become that you didn't stop the stabbing. You wonder if the Jolly Roger is flying inside your chest now, waving silently behind your ribs. Because here's the truth. The flag is more than fabric. It's a line. And you're on the wrong side of it now. There's a sound that always makes your stomach twist, no matter how long you've been at sea. It's not cannon fire, not even the kersim of splintering wood. It's quieter than that. It's the creak of rope being pulled tight, the kind that loops around wrists or ankles or a man's throat. It's the prelude to punishment. You hear it now, echoing through the stillness of the afternoon, and the hairs on your neck rise like sails in a squall. Someone's broken the code, again. This time it's simple. Theft. One of the newer crew, barely more than a boy, was caught trying to sneak a silver ring into his boot. It wasn't even a valuable one, just a little band from the last raid, probably worthless. But the captain made the rules clear. Loot gets divided fairly. Anyone caught skimming? That's mutiny in miniature. And mutiny, even in its mildest form, gets met with pain. They tie him to the mast. He doesn't struggle. Maybe he knows that struggling just makes it worse. Maybe he's too scared to move. His shirt is torn off, his back pale and trembling. The boatswain steps forward with the whip. An old knotted thing with bits of shell and wire woven into the strands. It's not meant for correction. It's meant for damage. You've never heard a whip break the air before. It whistles first, like a snake hissing through the dark, and cracks with a sound like bones snapping. The boy screams. The crew doesn't blink. Another lash. More blood. By the third, he's sobbing. By the fifth, he's quiet, just breathing raggedly. Eyes wide and distant, mouth moving like he's praying or cursing or both. You turn away. Not because you're noble, because if you watch too long, someone might think you enjoyed it. And that's worse. On a pirate ship, too much sympathy is weakness. Too much interest is sadism. The safest thing is detachment. So you walk to the rail and stare out at the sea, pretending the salt wind stings your eyes. Pirates were brutal, but they weren't lawless. They had systems. Punishment wasn't chaos. It was ritual. Whippings, maroonings, beatings, even executions, all followed an unspoken code. You broke the rules, you paid, and it didn't matter if you were new or seasoned. The punishment was often public, a lesson to everyone else, not just to scare but to remind. A pirate crew couldn't afford freeloaders or liars. One loose thread and the whole ship unravelled. There's talk sometimes of a man named Holtz, no one knows if he's real, who supposedly tried to poison the captain for a bigger share. They say he was tied to the bowsprit, spread-eagled like a scarecrow, and left there through a storm lashed by rain and wind until his skin peeled like burnt parchment. When he finally died, they cut him down, not for burial, but to toss him to the sharks. Elias says that part's true. He claims he saw the sharks waiting under the hull. Some punishments are creative. A guy once drank too much grog, pissed in the water barrel and got caught. He didn't get flogged. He got silence. No one spoke to him for 3 days, no one handed him food or water, no one acknowledged his existence. On the 4th day, he cracked, stood on the rail and started yelling nonsense. The captain called him back down. He refused, then he jumped. The sea took him quietly. There's a fringe tale you hear one night during a game of dice, half-whispered between curses. A ship out of Nassau once punished thieves by sewing them into sailcloth and dragging them behind the boat. Not long, just enough to scrape the skin off. They called it the ghost tow. Supposedly, if you survived, they let you stay. You had to live with your skin half gone, but you got to live. That was the reward. Some historians argue that these punishments weren't as common as legends make them sound. They claim that pirate crews relied more on social pressure, voting and practical consequences, like docking shares or demotion. But those are historians sitting at desks, dry and safe. You've seen what happens when someone breaks the code out here. The lash is real. The bruises don't lie. Fear is a faster teacher than fairness. After the flogging, the boy is cut down. He collapses onto the deck, twitching. Someone hands him a dirty rag to bite. No one helps him up. He has to crawl below on his own. Whether he stays or jumps ship at the next port, no one knows. What matters is that everyone saw what happens when the rules get bent. The crew moves on. Lunch is served. Someone starts humming. A sea shanty like the mast wasn't just dripping blood 5 minutes ago. You clean your blade that evening, even though it hasn't seen use today. You do it because it's something to focus on. Something mechanical. One stroke, then another. Elias sits nearby, quiet as ever, running his fingers over the grip of his pistol like it's a talisman. Neither of you speaks. You've learned by now that the worst wounds aren't always from battle. Sometimes they come from inside, betrayals, whispers, quiet cruelty. There's no honour in watching someone bleed out for a ring. There's no pride in tying a man to a mast. But there's survival. And in pirate life, survival always wins. There's an eerie moment after nightfall. The ship rocks gently, moonlight slipping across the deck like spilled milk. You pass by the mast, and you swear you see the imprint of the boy's body still there, shadowed in the wood, like the ship remembers. Maybe it does. After all, she's seen more punishment than most prisons. And here's the part that keeps you up. You didn't stop it. You didn't speak up. And part of you knows, next time it could be you, maybe not for theft, but for failing in a raid, for getting caught sneaking extra water, for stepping on the wrong toes. Because out here, punishment isn't about justice, it's about control. And the whip doesn't care who's guilty, only who's next. Shore leave isn't a reward. Not really. It's more like a collective pressure release, the kind that lets everyone explode at once before they start stabbing each other on the ship. You hear the word, port, and the crew cheers like children who've been promised candy in a fist fight. The ship changes course and suddenly everyone starts preening, brushing knots from their beards, trying to bleach sweat stains from their shirts, and swapping out boots full of seawater for ones that only smell mostly like dead fish. You can't help it. You're excited too. You haven't walked on stable ground in weeks. Your knees have forgotten how to function without sway. And the idea of land. Real land. With smells that aren't mould and bilge. With food that doesn't crunch when it's not supposed to. That's enough to make you overlook the fact that half the crew is planning to drink until they forget their own names. The port in question is a crooked little place clinging to the edge of an unnamed island. All thatched roofs and bent palm trees, and a harbour that looks like it was dug by a drunk god. There's one dock, half a dozen shanty bars, and a brothel that leans so hard to the left it looks like it's trying to escape itself. You dock mid-morning. By mid-afternoon, the crew has scattered into the town like rats onto a bread cart. The first punch gets thrown before you even make it down the gangplank. 2 men fighting over who gets to disembark first. One ends up in the water, laughing and bleeding from the nose. Everyone cheers. You step around them and follow Elias, who's already halfway down the dock, moving with the calm purpose of a man who knows exactly where he buried his last stash of emergency rum. Port days follow a certain pattern. Drink, fight, gamble, regret. Not always in that order. You make it to a tavern called the Drunken Gull. where the floor is mostly sand and the roof leaks grog from the second story. Inside, it's chaos. Tankards slam, dice clatter. A man in the corner is playing a hurdy-gurdy with such intensity you suspect he's exorcising demons. You get handed a drink that smells like it was strained through a cannonball. You drink it anyway. By your second cup, things get hazy. By your third, you've arm-wrestled a man twice your size and won purely by sneezing mid-match and distracting him. By your fourth, you've lost your boot in a dice game. Not the pair, just the left one. You don't even remember taking it off. Historically, pirate ports were melting pots of debauchery. Nassau, Port Royal, Tortuga, names whispered with equal parts dread and delight. They were places where pirate ships could resupply, unload stolen goods, and more importantly, let their crews go wild. Tavern owners welcomed them for the gold, locals tolerated them for the chaos, and the pirates, they came for everything the sea denied them: food, flesh, and forgetfulness. You stumble outside around dusk. The air smells like fire, sweat, and sweet tobacco. Somewhere nearby, someone is being serenaded very badly. A man runs past with no pants. Another walks behind him, calmly holding the pants like a trophy. You turn and see Elias sitting on a barrel, feeding crumbs to a chicken he insists is named Morris. You don't question it. You're too drunk to spell chicken. The brothel is easy to find. Just follow the trail of broken glass and laughter. You don't go inside, but plenty of others do. You hear the creaking walls from the street, the moaning, the occasional scream. It's not all pleasure. Pirates often confuse lust with ownership, and not all encounters are consensual. That part never makes it into the sea shanties. You feel a little sick, and not just from the rum. Here's a bizarre little fact you overhear from a drunken sailor. There's a port where they train parrots to mimic coins clinking in a purse, just to lure pirates into gambling halls. Another sailor claims there's a house that lets you pay in teeth. Both men have black eyes. You don't doubt either story. Later, you sit in the sand outside a shuttered bakery, cradling your head. The stars are blurry, your stomach is a mutiny all its own. You hear a familiar whistle and look up to see one of your crewmates being chased by a mob. He's laughing. They're not. You decide not to get involved. A lesson you've learned well. If it's not your blood, it's not your problem. As the night stretches on, the streets get quieter. Fewer shouts, more groans. You pass by a man asleep with a chicken on his chest and 2 gold coins balanced on his eyes. Not dead, just hopeful. Someone plays a sad tune on a fiddle, the notes rising into the night like ghosts. You sit beside a barrel and finally throw up everything you've eaten in 2 days. It feels like freedom. Scholars debate whether shore leave was truly as wild as the legends say. Some argue the stories were exaggerated, tall tales passed around to make pirates seem more fearsome or more fun. Others point to official records from governors and merchants that describe drunken mobs, fires, and even full-blown riots. From where you're sitting, wiping your mouth with a sleeve that smells like fish and blood, it all feels pretty accurate. You wake the next morning on the deck of the ship. You don't remember getting there. Elias is next to you, holding Morris in his lap. "You bought him," he says, deadpan. "Said you wanted a conversation partner." Morris squawks and immediately poops on your leg. You nod, accepting your fate. The crew trickles back throughout the day, limping, groaning, bragging. One man's missing a finger. Another has a new tattoo that says freedom in backward letters. The captain counts heads, nods once and says, "Set sail." No one asks where. No one questions the decision. Shore leave is over, the sea calls. You haul lines with shaking hands and a pounding skull, knowing you won't see land again for weeks, maybe months. As the port fades behind you, someone starts singing. It's a slow song, not a cheerful one. A tune about death and salt and lost gold. The crew joins in. You hum along even though your throat feels raw. Morris flaps his wings and settles on a barrel. You're back at sea. And somehow, despite the bruises and the hangover and the suspicious pain in your right knee, you already miss land. Treasure. That's the word that got you here, right? Not freedom, not rebellion, not life on your own terms. Treasure. Shiny gold coins, glimmering necklaces, crowns from fallen kings tucked into velvet-lined chests. Every tale you ever heard growing up dangled that word in front of your face like bait on a hook. But now, after months aboard this cursed ship, after blood and bruises and chewing your own sleeve to stop your teeth from chattering through storms, you've realised a brutal truth. There is no treasure, Not the kind you imagined anyway. You're in the hold right now, helping Elias sort through your latest haul. The big score. A sugar bark seized 3 days ago, after a decent chase and an unimpressive fight. No one died, at least not on your side. And what did you risk your life for? Crates. Endless crates. Of sugar, molasses, cotton, tobacco. A warehouse on water. You dig through one crate looking for coins. Instead, your fingers sink into sacks of raw sugar so fine it clings to your sweat like flour. Sweet? Yes. Worth dying for? Definitely not. But the quartermaster is grinning. He's practically dancing among the barrels, because this apparently is real treasure. Sugar fetches a high price at the right port. Tobacco too, and cloth, especially if it's still dry, can be flipped for more rum and gunpowder than a pile of coins. You just stare at the sticky mess pooling in your boots and wonder what the hell you're doing with your life. Elias claps your shoulder. What? You wanted gold? He asks. This is gold, friend. White gold, sweet gold, gold you can eat. You resist the urge to throw a sugar sack at him. Historically, pirates rarely found the fabled chests of Spanish doubloons and cursed jewels that stories like to go on about. Most of the time, the loot was more practical. Barrels of food, tools, spices, medicine. Things a pirate crew could use or sell quickly before they rotted. Gold was rare, and when it was found, it was often in the form of trade bullion or coin mixed in with other cargo. Once in a while, a ship would stumble upon something glittery enough to make the legends real, but those were the exceptions, not the rule. And even when you do find coins, there's a catch. The moment they are in your hands, every man on board becomes a little twitchier, a little more watchful, a little more willing to slit a throat over a bad dice roll. Silver brings sharp tempers, gold brings murder. You've seen it happen twice already. Once over a gold necklace that turned out to be brass. Once over a coin that vanished in the night and later turned up in a boot. The wrong boot. But sugar? No one fights over sugar. No one gets stabbed over dried figs or indigo powder. That's part of the appeal, you guess. Safer cargo. Less stabbing, more boredom. And yet the crew still talks about buried treasure like it's real. There's always some guy with a whisper. I heard of a cache out in the Keys, sealed in iron. Black Sam Bellamy's hoard stashed in a cave only visible at low tide. A wreck near Tortuga, sunk with 30 chests of coin and one of bone. You don't know if they believe it or if the story's just too good to let die. One man, Weevil, who smells like he was born in a boot, swears he found a map once, sold it for a bottle of rum and a kiss from a toothless brothel girl, claims it led to a cave full of golden idols and goblets tall as a man's thigh. You ask why he sold it then, he just grins and says, maps are cursed. Best to be poor and alive than rich and haunted. That's another thing you've noticed. The richer the loot, the darker the stories. Everyone's heard of treasure with a cost. Chests that scream when opened. Gold that melts when touched. Ships that sank because their cargo wanted to stay buried. You chalk it up to too much rum and too many concussions, but part of you, some salty sleep-deprived part, wonders. There's a debate among historians too about whether pirates actually buried treasure. The popular image of X marks the spot and skeletons guarding hoards comes mostly from books, not reality. Only a few documented cases exist, like the infamous Captain Kidd, who may or may not have buried a stash on Gardiner's Island. Most pirates spent their loot fast. Booze, women, bribes, repairs. There was no point in saving when tomorrow you might be floating in the sea with half your face gone. Still, one of the gunners carries a scrap of oilskin with shaky writing and half a drawing. He says his father gave it to him, says it leads to the treasure, the one everyone dreams about. No one believes him, but no one laughs either. You help haul the cargo up to the deck where it's stacked and catalogued. A few sacks burst, covering the boards in sweet white dust. One pirate snorts a line of it as a joke and immediately chokes. The crew laughs so hard someone falls overboard. No one jumps in to help. That night, as the sun sinks and the barrels are tied down, you sit by the rail with Elias and listen to the others sing about gold and women with ruby eyes. You think about how none of them ever seem to sing about tobacco or nutmeg. No one composes a sea shanty about dried oranges, and yet here you are, sailing from death to death for sugar. You still dream about gold sometimes, coins tumbling through your fingers, a chest so full you can't see the bottom. You wake up with your hand closed tight, gripping nothing but splinters. Here's a strange little fact. Some pirates were paid in goods instead of coin. A barrel of molasses here, a bolt of silk there. They'd trade those items in port like merchants, hawking stolen tea for a sword or an old map. That makes you laugh a little. Pirates playing shopkeeper. You guess everyone's got bills to pay. You glance at the horizon, dark and wide and endless, and think, maybe the real treasure is just surviving long enough to spend anything at all. Or maybe the real treasure is an orange that hasn't turned to mush. Or a dry pair of boots. You pat your own boot, and it squelches. Definitely not the boots. It starts with a woman's voice shouting over the wind. Not a scream, not a shriek, just a barked command in a language you can't place. At first, you think it's your own captain, shouting orders from behind you. But when you turn, you see another ship, low and sleek, sails dark as storm clouds, moving like it's being pulled by something angry and hungry beneath the waves. And standing on the forecastle, arms folded, chin high, is a woman. Not some tavern lass dragged along for luck. No, she's the captain, the crew mutters. Elias whistles low. That's Anne Bonny's colours, he says, half in awe, half in fear. Or maybe Mary Read's. Either way, we're in for it. You've heard the names before, whispers of women who fought fiercer than any man, who dressed like devils and fought like demons. You would assume those stories were mostly myth. Turns out they're standing 30 feet away, armed to the teeth and staring down your entire ship like they're picking out which part to sink first. Your captain doesn't lower the Jolly Roger, that would be weak. Instead, he calls for a parley. A rare thing, risky, but sometimes necessary when the other side looks like it knows what it's doing, and worse, enjoys it. A rowboat is lowered, you're chosen to row. Of course, because who wouldn't want to row straight into a ship captained by a legend? You keep your head low as you cross the water. Up close, their ship is different from yours. Sleeker, better maintained, less vomit-stained, for one thing. There's a strange sense of order. The ropes are clean, the deck is scrubbed. And the crew, mostly women, not all, but a lot. Some with swords longer than your leg. One with a pair of pistols slung across her chest like they are part of her ribs. You're ushered aboard and brought before the captain. Her name's not Anne, or Mary. She tells you to call her Maud, just Maud. Her eyes are bright green and colder than seawater on a winter morning. Her hat is huge, ridiculously huge. You wonder if she wears it to keep the sky from falling on her. The parley is short, efficient. She wants part of your last haul. She knows what you took. She knows where you took it from. She even knows how many barrels of molasses you brought aboard. No one asks how, spies probably, or informants in port. Doesn't matter. She offers a split. 50-50, or she takes all of it by force. Your captain wisely accepts. He knows a losing hand when he sees one, and from the twitch of Maud's fingers near her pistol, he knows she'd enjoy making him regret saying no. The deal is struck, no shots fired, no blood spilled. That's rarer than buried gold. Back on your ship, the mood is mixed. Some are angry at the split, others relieved. You, though, you're fascinated, because you'd assumed this was a man's world, a brute's world, a place where women only existed as myths or victims or background noise. But that's not the full truth. You've just met one of the exceptions, and out here exceptions make the rules. Historically, female pirates were rare, but very real. Anne Bonny and Mary Read were the most infamous, both known for dressing as men in battle, wielding pistols, and reportedly fighting harder than anyone else aboard. Qing Shi, a Chinese pirate queen, commanded a fleet of hundreds of ships and enforced a strict code that included instant execution for disobedience. These weren't mascots. These were leaders, terror makers, rule breakers, and occasionally survival stories dressed in lace and steel. There's a superstition among sailors that women on ships bring bad luck, that they stir up storms and drive men mad. You've heard that one plenty. You've also heard the older sailors claim that seeing a woman aboard means the sea will soon take someone. But now you're wondering if that's just old fear talking. Because Captain Maud didn't look like bad luck. She looked like order, like danger, like exactly the kind of person who survives out here. Where survival means knowing when to trade barrels and when to slit throats. Not every pirate queen is famous. There are quiet ones. The cook's assistant on your ship, Mira, is said to have slit a Navy officer's throat during a boarding party and tossed his body into the sea with no one noticing. She rarely speaks, but everyone makes sure to be polite when she sharpens her knives. Then there's the oddballs. the musician with a third nipple who claims it's a lucky charm from a mermaid, the old man who believes his beard is haunted by the spirit of his dead wife, the carpenter who swears he once kissed Davy Jones and now can't eat shellfish without crying. These people aren't captains, but they're part of the fabric of pirate life, fringe characters, living legends. They keep things interesting and terrifying. One of them, Jasper the Mad, has a tattoo of a woman riding a shark on his back. He says it's Ching Shi, or his mother. He's not sure. Either way, he talks to her every morning before breakfast. You used to think he was insane. Now you're not so sure. There's an open debate among historians about how much power women really had in pirate society. Some argue they were rare exceptions, tolerated only because of extraordinary skill or force of personality. Others suggest that pirate life, being outside the bounds of traditional society, allowed for more freedom, gender included. A floating meritocracy where the only thing that mattered was what you could do with a blade and a bottle. You ask Elias what he thinks. He shrugs. Doesn't matter, he says. Anyone who can sail, fight, and not get killed is fine by me. Don't care if they've got a beard or a bonnet. You nod. Because honestly, he's right. A week later, you spot Maud's ship again on the horizon. She doesn't come close, just sails past, a black streak on the water. Her flag flies high, an hourglass above crossed blades. You wonder what message she's sending this time. A reminder? A warning? Maybe just a nod from one survivor to another. That night, you dream of standing at a ship's wheel, wind in your hair, a fleet behind you. In the dream, your voice is loud, your coat is long, and no one questions your orders. You wake up smiling, just a little, because out here, the sea doesn't care who you are, only whether you last. And Maud? She's still out there. You're eating cold fish off a rusty tin plate when you notice something odd. It's quiet, not calm. Pirate ships are never calm, but quiet in the way a room goes silent right after someone says something they shouldn't have. You glance up. Elias is gone, so is Whisper. The captain hasn't left his quarters in 2 days, and the quartermaster? He's been pacing the deck like a priest at a hanging. The crew won't meet your eyes. Something's off. And out here, off usually means someone's about to end up bleeding or on fire, or both. You ask around carefully, neutral questions. Seen Elias? Captain all right? You get shrugs and non-answers, a few scowls. One man spits overboard without looking at you. Finally, you catch Brody near the forecastle, nursing a cracked lip and a mug of what he insists is tea, but definitely smells like old socks and rum. He leans in close, low voice and says, "They're talking deals. Navy, maybe. Or the East India bastards." Deals? That's worse than mutiny. Pirates live outside the law, that's the whole point. But every now and then someone on board gets clever, or desperate, and starts talking to the other side. Maybe they offer up intel in exchange for gold. Maybe they sell out old allies to buy a pardon. Either way, it's treason, and treason doesn't go unnoticed for long. Turns out Whisper, who's been with the ship longer than you, disappeared during the last port call. No one saw him leave. No note, no fight, just gone. But someone found a sealed envelope in his hammock. Nothing written on the outside. Inside, a list of names. Yours is on it, so is Elias's, so is Brody's. The implication is clear. Someone is keeping tabs, selling out the crew one name at a time. Your hands go cold. It could be nothing. A joke, a warning, or it could mean that the next time you dock, someone's waiting with shackles and a gallows already built. The crew starts to fracture. People talk in corners now. Arguments bubble just beneath the surface. At night, hammocks are quieter, but not because people are sleeping. They're listening, watching. You keep your blade closer than ever and make a habit of sleeping with one eye half open. Elias finally returns one morning with a split lip and no explanation. You ask him where he went. He says, out. You don't press. But later, he slips you a folded scrap of paper with a single line written in charcoal. Trust no one below deck. You ask no more questions after that. The captain emerges the next day, looking older than you remember. Eyes sunken, jaw set. He orders a course change, away from the usual trade lanes. That's when you know he's scared. Whatever Whisper was doing, whatever deal was struck, it's big enough to spook the man who once laughed while being shot at. The captain says nothing about the note, nothing about the list, but the sails are tightened, the guns cleaned, and no one leaves their post. Then you notice the ship following you. It's subtle at first, as just a dot on the horizon. A merchant vessel, maybe. Then it gets closer, never gaining, never falling back, just there. You sail left, it follows. You slow down, it slows too, always out of cannon range, always watching. Some say it's a Navy spy ship, others say it's another pirate crew that knows about the list. A few whisper that it's Whisper himself, captaining a ghost ship with a hold full of your names and a crew of informants. That night someone sets fire to the water barrels. That's when things truly fall apart. Fire on a ship is nightmare fuel. Even a small flame can become a floating funeral in minutes. Luckily, it's caught early. The flames are stomped out, but the barrels? Gone. Cracked, smoking, leaking into the planks. You'll survive maybe 3 days without fresh water. The captain demands names. No one answers, so he chooses one. A man named France, too slow to deny it, too drunk to fake innocence. He's tied to the mast, accused of sabotage. He cries, begs, says he knows nothing. It doesn't matter. He's not punished. He's executed. You watch the crew swing from paranoia to relief to guilt in under a minute. Here's a fringe fact for you. Some pirate crews employed informants on purpose. Ships needed eyes and ears, especially on long hauls when tempers flared. The informant wasn't always punished. They were often protected, if they served the right master. Loyalty wasn't about morals, it was about survival. There's scholarly debate about whether pirates truly had organised spy networks among themselves, or whether betrayal was just part of the job description. Some records suggest pirates worked with local officials to tip off approaching Navy patrols. Others paint pirates as chaotic, isolated bands with no interest in long games. Your ship feels like both at once, wild and calculated, loyal and suspicious, a floating contradiction. You begin to suspect everyone, even Elias, even Brody. You trust no one with your food, your weapons, your secrets. You carve a little mark into the wall beside your hammock each morning, a tally of how many days you've stayed off the list. So far you're up to 4, then someone scratches a mark through your 3rd tally. Just one clean line. The next morning a new sailor is missing. No splash was heard, no note was left. His hammock hangs empty, swinging gently, as if someone climbed out and never came back. The sea looks calm, but you know better. The ship behind you is gone now, vanished sometime during the night. Maybe they turned back, maybe they were never real to begin with. But the damage is done, no one trusts anyone. And in a place like this, that's a kind of slow poison you can't bleed out. You sit on the deck, sleepless, sword in your lap, watching the waves for signs of movement. Elias joins you but doesn't speak. The silence between you is the only language that makes sense now. Behind you, someone coughs in the dark, someone else mutters about seeing a light on the water. You grip your blade tighter. You don't know who sold out the crew. You don't know who will be next. But one thing is certain. This ship is sinking from the inside. The first cannonball comes without warning. No flag, no distant shout, no glimpse of sails. Just a thunderclap of sound, a column of water erupting 10 feet off the port bow, and then a voice, your voice screaming, "Naval ship!" Before your brain even catches up, the deck erupts into chaos. Men scramble, orders are barked, ropes are hauled and tied without thinking. You've drilled for this, you've feared this. But drills aren't battle, and nothing about this feels like practice. You see it now, slicing through the morning fog like a blade. A white-sailed warship, the flag of a king snapping above its deck. It's bigger than you, taller, heavier. You can practically hear the polished brass and starch in its sails, and it's coming for you like it knows your name. This is the worst-case scenario. Not just because they outgun you, but because they hate you. The Navy doesn't see pirates as criminals. They see you as a disease, something to be eradicated. You've burned their ships, stolen their goods, humiliated their officers. This isn't about justice, it's about revenge. The captain bellows for speed. You and Elias scramble to the rigging, hands roar as you haul sail. The ship groans as it leans into the wind, like even the planks know what's coming. Another cannon fires, this one closer. The splash coats you in sea spray. You don't look back. Looking back wastes time. Looking back gets you dead. But no matter how fast you move, the Navy is faster. Their hull cuts the water clean. Their gunners fire in organised rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. A deadly heartbeat. One shot grazes the stern, sending wood shrapnel flying. You hit the deck hard, arms over your head. When you rise, the world is louder and smaller and spinning. The next order comes, ready the guns. You've got fewer cannons, half your powder is damp, and one of the gunners has been blind in one eye since a drunken mishap involving grog and a torch. You're not hopeful, but you move anyway. That's what battle does. makes you move even when hope's already abandoned ship. The first pirate shot misses, the second hits. A lucky strike, one of the enemy's sails tears, flapping like a wounded bird. The crew cheers, but it's short-lived. The Navy fires back with a full broadside. You feel the impact in your teeth. The ship rocks like it's trying to throw you off. A chunk of railing explodes. Someone screams. You see Elias go down. You crawl to him, heart in your throat. But it's just a graze. His arm is bleeding, but he's breathing. You drag him behind a barrel as another volley shrieks overhead. Historically, Navy ships had advantages pirates couldn't match. Better weapons, more men, sturdier hulls. Pirates relied on speed, surprise, and fear. But when those things failed, it was like fighting a lion with a stick. Especially in later years, as piracy became more of a hunted practice and less of a tolerated nuisance, governments poured resources into chasing and exterminating crews like yours. And some naval officers made it personal. There's no romance here, no clever tricks, just brute force. The two ships circle each other like animals, teeth bared, blood in the water. Your captain tries to outmaneuver them using every trick he knows, sudden turns, faked retreats, surprise broadsides. But they are not fooled. They've seen it all before. They answer every trick with a wall of iron and fire. And then they close the gap. Grappling hooks fly. The worst kind of fight begins, the boarding. The enemy swarms your deck, uniforms stained with smoke, sabres raised. It's chaos, screams, steel, blood. You see men fall, some from wounds, others overboard. You find yourself locked in combat with a man twice your size and only win because he trips on a loose plank and you stab him through the gut as he falls. You don't feel heroic. You feel sick. Elias is fighting near the foremast, his face twisted, his shirt soaked in blood. Not all his, maybe not even mostly his. He's still on his feet. So are you. That's what counts. You don't know how long the fight lasts. 10 minutes? An hour? Time breaks apart in battle. What you do know is the tide turns, just barely. The Navy captain is wounded. His men falter. Your quartermaster roars like a beast and leads a countercharge that pushes them back across the gangplank. One pirate drops a torch on their deck before they retreat. Fire leaps up fast. Someone screams to cut the ropes. And just like that, it's over. The Navy ship limps away, burning slowly, smoke curling like ink across the sea. Your ship is battered, torn, bleeding from the seams. You've lost 4 men, 2 more are dying. The deck looks like a butcher's table. You sit down hard back against the mast. Blood on your face, your fingers twitching like they've forgotten they're attached. Elias drops beside you. His arm is bound with a strip of someone's shirt. He doesn't speak. Neither do you. And here's the eerie part. After the Navy flees, the sea goes completely quiet. No wind, no gulls, just the crackle of burned wood and the groans of the wounded. It feels wrong, like the ocean is waiting to see what you'll do next. Here's a fringe fact. Some pirates believe the Navy used spies to mark ships with cursed symbols before an attack. Tiny knots of red thread tied into the rigging, ashes smeared across the mast. You think that's nonsense, until you see a red stain near the helm that wasn't there yesterday. There's scholarly debate about just how effective pirate resistance was against Navy forces. Some argue pirates avoided conflict whenever possible, knowing they were outgunned. Others claim successful pirate crews often defeated Navy ships through cunning and speed. Today your crew won. Barely. But the cost? It shows on every face. That night, a silence falls over the ship. No songs, no games, no toasts. Just the sound of repairs and shallow breathing. You lie in your hammock, every bruise pulsing like a drumbeat, your hands still coated in blood. Some of it's yours, some of it isn't. You should feel proud, but all you feel is numb. And somewhere out there you know another ship is coming. Bigger, better, meaner. Because the Navy never forgets. They catch you while you're sleeping, not during battle, not during a storm or raid, just a quiet, still night when the sails are full and the sea is flat as polished glass. You'd almost started to believe the worst was behind ye. You were wrong. It starts with a whistle. Not a shout, not a bang, just a whistle, low and slow. Then the sound of boots on the deck, too many to count. By the time you're fully awake, your wrists are bound and there's a sword tip hovering near your throat. The man holding it has that clean, stiff look only Navy officers seem to pull off, like someone ironed him into his uniform. Behind him, more soldiers swarm the ship, weapons drawn, expressions stone cold, no fight, no warning, just capture. You're dragged up onto the deck where the rest of the crew's already assembled, lined up, tied and silent. Elias is there, kneeling with blood on his temple. The captain stands in the middle, arms behind his back, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the officer like he's memorising every wrinkle in the man's smug, pale face. A trap. Of course it was. Whisper. The list. The ship that trailed you for days. This wasn't a random patrol, it was a plan. You feel stupid for not seeing it sooner, angry at yourself and terrified. They make you kneel. The officer reads a proclamation in a bored nasal voice, something about piracy, treason, theft of crown property, disturbing the peace of civilized waters. You catch the words to be tried and hanged in accordance with His Majesty's law. The crew listens in stunned silence. One man starts sobbing, another laughs long and hollow. You just stare at the deck and try not to throw up. Pirates didn't always die in battle. Capture was common. Navy ships could outrun you, outgun you, and sometimes outsmart you. When they took you alive, it wasn't for mercy. It was for the theatre. Public trials, public hangings, a reminder to everyone watching that the crown had teeth, and they knew how to use them. You're loaded into a navy brig the size of a merchant's outhouse and twice as filthy. They cram you in with 10 other men, shoulder to shoulder, ankles chained, air thick with sweat and piss. It's dark. No windows, no airflow, just the occasional creak of the hull and the stink of fear. The next few days pass like molasses. Time slows, then stops, then starts crawling backward. You sleep in bursts, hunched over your knees. You eat hard tack that tastes like sawdust and iron. You drink water from a wooden cup with someone else's teeth marks on it. You try to speak to Elias, but they've separated you. Everyone looks the same in the dark, tired, bruised, haunted. There's a rumour spreading, the Navy's taking you to Port Royal, the big one, gallows tall enough to be seen from the sea. They like to hang pirates in batches there. Makes for better crowds. You hear someone say they once hanged 6 men in a row and left the bodies up for days. Someone else says they dipped them in tar first. Keeps the birds away. You ask the man beside you how long the trip will take. He just mutters, "Too long for the lucky ones, not long enough for the rest." You try to remember every step that led here. Press-ganged onto a ship, flogged for nothing, starved, betrayed. And somewhere in there, you became something worse. A pirate, a thing to be caught, tried, displayed like a butcher's prize. You think of the townsfolk who'll come to watch, parents holding up their kids to get a better view of your neck snapping like dry wood. You think of Elias, of Brody, of the boy who was flogged for stealing a ring. You wonder how many of them will make it to the trial. You wonder if you even want to. Here's a strange little fact. Some pirates, when captured, confessed to crimes they hadn't committed, just to sound more impressive. They wanted to go down in history, be remembered as legends instead of losers. Others begged, pleaded, wept for mercy, swore they were just passengers, forced aboard. Some even were passengers. Didn't matter. If you were caught on a pirate ship, you were guilty by proximity. One night a guard stops at your cell and mutters, "You've got a visitor." You're hauled to a tiny room where a man in powdered wig and ink-stained fingers waits with a stack of papers. He's a scribe, wants your statement, your confession. He's offering a deal, sort of, cooperate, name names, and maybe, just maybe, you get a stay of execution, maybe even a pardon. You stare at him for a long moment, then you smile and ask, "You got any oranges?" He does not find that funny. There's scholarly debate about how many pirates actually went to trial and how many were just executed on the spot. Some sources say trials were mostly for show, foregone conclusions with scripted outcomes. Others suggest some pirates were granted clemency if they turned informer or agreed to hunt other pirates. You don't know which version is true, you're not sure it matters anymore. The ship rocks hard one night, bad weather maybe. A few guards stumble, one drops a ring of keys near your cell, and for one impossible second the world holds its breath. But no one moves, not you, not the others. You're all too tired, too broken. Even freedom doesn't look like salvation anymore. Just a longer delay. You spend the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, which is just black wood and dripping condensation. Every creak sounds like a noose tightening. Every splash sounds like a final breath. The next morning you see land, and beyond it, the gallows. The docks of Port Royal smell like brine and rot and something faintly metallic. Maybe blood. maybe just the iron chains locked around your wrists. You're marched off the ship with the rest of the captured crew, single file, boots dragging, manacles clinking in rhythm like some perverse sea shanty. The townspeople are already lining the streets. Some spit, some stare. A few actually cheer. You can't tell which is worse. Port Royal was once the most wicked place in the New World, a pirate haven, a paradise of sin and rum and poorly made decisions. But now, it's the Crown's gleaming example of order. Cleaned up, smoothed out, purged of its pirate soul and replaced with gallows lawmen and preachers who speak with the same authority as cannon fire. You feel it immediately. That smug, suffocating sense of righteousness. The kind that doesn't just want you dead, it wants you erased. You're told your trial is scheduled for the next morning, quick and efficient. They don't want pirates rotting in their cells, they want them swinging in the sun. You've heard the phrase before, the king's justice waits for no man, especially not one who's already been judged by the colour of his sails. That night, you and Elias sit against the wall silent at first. Then he says, "You think they'll let us say anything before?" You shrug, probably, a few words, some dramatic gesture, something to remind the crowd that you're not just meat. Elias nods like that's enough. Then he laughs, low and bitter. "I always thought I'd die at sea, not on a stage." You don't know what to say. Neither of you sleeps. The trial is more of a performance than anything else. The courtroom's packed. Journalists, locals, officers in spotless uniforms. They call your names one by one, and each of you gets the same treatment. Charges read aloud like scripture, a quick nod from the magistrate, and then a moment to plead. You say not guilty just to say it. So do most of the others. One man screams that he was never a pirate, that he was kidnapped and forced to scrub decks. No one believes him. The judge doesn't even blink. The prosecution reads a list of your crimes, some true, some exaggerated, some you're pretty sure someone else did entirely. There's no jury, just the gavel, the judge, and the sentence already waiting behind his teeth. You glance at the crowd and see no sympathy, just curiosity. Hunger. They want a spectacle. They came for blood in daylight. Historically, pirate trials were public events, part deterrent, part entertainment. Records show gallows packed with spectators, children eating sugared fruit as men swung. Sometimes ministers were brought in to pray with the condemned. Other times, convicted pirates were forced to read pre-written confessions, rehearsed like actors before an execution. And then there were the rare few who used their final moment to curse the court, the crown, and everyone within earshot. You're sentenced before noon, guilty of piracy, theft, assault on officers of the crown, and lawful seizure of cargo, and generally wicked behaviour unbecoming of a subject of His Majesty. The phrase makes you laugh, the guards don't. Execution is scheduled for the following morning, fast, efficient, and publicly posted. You get one last meal, bread, cheese, something pretending to be stew. Elias offers you half of his, you don't ask why. You just eat in silence, savouring every bite like it's worth more than gold. That night, a minister visits your cell, a small man with a huge book and watery eyes. He asks if you'd like to pray. Elias tells him to go bugger himself with a crucifix. The man leaves. You almost laugh again. Then Elias turns to you and asks, "You think it was worth it?" And the answer should be no. It should be no, but part of you hesitates. You think of the open sea, the freedom, the wild nights. The laughter on the deck under a blood-orange sky. The wind in your face as you cut through the waves like a blade. The moments when, for just a second, you were more than you'd ever been on land. But then you think of the blood, the hunger, the betrayal, the whip, the fire, the way men scream when they're dying, the way your stomach dropped when the Navy cannons roared, the look in a child's eyes on a ship you raided, pure fear. You think of that. You look Elias in the eyes. "No," you say. He nods. "Me neither." There's a fringe account about a pirate who, facing execution, tricked the court by faking madness, chewed off a finger, screamed about sea demons, claimed to be Neptune's bastard son. They delayed his hanging for months. Some say he escaped. Others say they hanged him anyway, just upside down as a final joke. You wonder if you should have tried something like that. Too late now, and you don't sleep. Not because you're scared, though you are, but because you want to remember every second. You watch the moon drift through the bars. You listen to the wind. You count every breath like it matters. In the morning they come with chains. They march you to the gallows in a line. People cheer. Some boo. One woman throws a flower. You step onto the platform and the rope is heavy around your neck. Scratchy. Smells like damp rope and smoke. They ask if you want to speak. You look out at the crowd, you see children, sailors, officers, a man picking his teeth with a knife. You take a breath and say, "I was a fool, but I was free more than any of you here." Then you spit. The executioner doesn't wait. The trapdoor opens, you don't die, or maybe you do for a second. It's hard to say. One moment, there's rope around your throat, the crowd holding its collective breath, and the executioner's hand twitching toward the lever like a man just dying to do his job. The next, chaos. The kind that doesn't start with a shout or a gunshot, but with a scream from the gallows crowd that turns into a wave of voices, all shouting at once. Then comes the blast. Boom! Louder than any cannon you've ever heard. The gallows rocks. Dust fills the air. Something falls. Someone's yelling, "Fire!" And another voice is screaming, "Ambush!" Your eyes sting from the smoke. The rope loosens but doesn't fall. You're coughing, dizzy, still dangling, but your boots find a broken board. Just enough leverage to stay conscious. Then hands, familiar ones, grab your legs, cut the rope, drag you backward through the confusion. It's Elias. Blood running down one side of his face, shirt torn, eyes wild. "Come on," he yells, like you've just been asked to take a casual stroll and not flee your own execution. Around you, chaos blooms like rotten roses. The crowd is scattered, some running, some looting the corpses already down. A portion of the gallows has collapsed, probably the result of that first blast. Where there was once a stage, there's now shattered timber and twisted rope. You see a body still swinging from a half-broken beam. Not moving, not lucky. You don't know how it happened. You don't stop to ask. Elias is pulling you through smoke and panic, and the guards are trying to regroup, but they can't see 5 feet ahead through the choking grey. Somewhere a pistol cracks. A musket answers, then a second explosion, smaller this time, but closer. Pirates. They came back. Or some of them, at least. Later, someone will claim it was Maud and her crew slipping into port under the cover of night. Another will swear it was a local smuggler ring bribed to raise hell as a distraction. One drunk, ranting wildly in a tavern 2 weeks later, will say the devil himself came up through the ground and tore the gallows down. You'll never know for sure. What matters is that you're running, bleeding, barely breathing, and somehow being free. Elias drags you down alleyways you barely remember seeing on the way into town. You leap over barrels, duck through fences, push through stunned bystanders who drop baskets and curses in equal measure. A horse rears and bolts. A woman screams that the pirates are killing everyone. You try to shout back that you're not, at least not today, but your voice is gone, strangled by rope and smoke. Eventually you reach a low building near the edge of the docks. Someone inside whistles, a bird call, low and sharp, and the door opens. You tumble inside and collapse. You think you might pass out. Elias slaps your face lightly. "No dying," he mutters. "Not yet." Inside, there are others. Fugitives like you, some in navy gear, stolen and bloodied. One girl with a bandolier of pistols, a boy with a sack of bread who looks 12 and terrified. You recognize one or two from your crew, others are new, but the look is the same across every face. We survived, somehow, for now. They have a skiff, small, leaky, but it floats. The plan is simple. They'll wait until nightfall, slip out through the southern inlet, pray no one's watching. If you're caught, it's the noose again, if you're lucky. More likely a musket to the gut and a slow bleed in the mud, and so you wait. And every minute feels like a year. Someone hands you water. You drink. It tastes like dirt and metal, but it's wet. Someone else gives you bread. You can't chew. Your throat's still raw. You just swallow and try not to gag. You finally ask Elias what happened. He shrugs. Saw an opening, took it. Had help. That's all he says. Historically, escapes like this were rare, but not impossible. Port towns were messy places, guards corrupt, locals indifferent. If someone wanted to spring a pirate from the gallows, they had to move fast and dirty with more luck than skill. There are reports of bribed hangmen slipping knots loose, gunpowder stashes planted under scaffolds, even paid actors starting fights to cover a getaway. No two stories are ever quite the same, which only adds to the legend. Here's a weird little fringe fact. One pirate, John Halfjaw Hawkins, allegedly escaped hanging by biting through the rope with his teeth. Took 3 tries, broke 2 molars, and still had to fight his way out of the square. He died later that week in a bar brawl over a spoon. You think about that and wince. At least your teeth are intact. By nightfall, your group is down to 6. 3 didn't make it. Guards, maybe. Or the crowd, doesn't matter now. The docks are still patrolled, but not as tightly. Everyone's cleaning up the mess. Counting bodies, looking for answers. You stick to the shadows, knees buckling with every step. The rope burns on your neck, itch like fire. Elias helps you into the skiff and you push off. The water is silent. Too silent. The kind of self-tender that screams in your ears. You row with shaking arms, muscles screaming, praying to a god you never believed in. Behind you, Port Royal smoulders quietly under moonlight. Gallows hanging empty. For now. You make it past the rocks, past the bay, and then, just like that, you're at sea again. Free. But not safe, not yet. The ocean doesn't welcome you back. It tolerates you, maybe. A sullen host allowing an unwanted guest to sleep on its floorboards just until sunrise. You and Elias drift in that leaky skiff for the better part of 2 days, with nothing but a sack of mouldy hardtack, a flask of brackish water, and the occasional gull that swoops overhead like it's considering pecking your eyes out. You take turns rowing and bailing. Elias jokes that you've officially earned the worst spar experience in the Caribbean. You try to laugh, but it comes out as a rasp. Your throat still burns from the gallows rope. There's no plan, no destination, just water and sky and that distant sound in your ears that might be the wind, or your heartbeat slowly unravelling. By the 3rd day, the sun is relentless. It drills into your scalp like it's trying to find your thoughts. The salt crusts on your skin. Your lips split. You start seeing things. A sail on the horizon. A ship's bell. Elias telling a joke that turns into a hymn. You sleep in minutes, half aware, one eye open, hand still clutching a knife out of habit. Not fear. You're past fear now. What's left is reflex. On the 4th day, a ship appears. Real this time, low in the water. Fast, no colours flying. Your heart lifts, then sinks. Could be pirates. Could be slavers. Could be the same damn Navy patrols you just escaped. You don't wave, don't shout, just sit there, holding your breath while Elias squints into the sun and mutters, "Better to die on deck than in this bathtub." They see you. Of course they do. The ship swings toward you like a predator who's just spotted dinner with legs. You hear shouting, ropes, orders. A grappling hook clinks into the side of the skiff and drags you in. Men haul you aboard, rough hands, sharp eyes, one pokes you in the ribs. You flinch, he laughs. Then a voice you recognise says, "Drop that one. He's with me." Maud, of course it's her. She appears at the rail like a ghost conjured by sheer exhaustion. Coat dark, boots polished, hat even more ridiculous than you remember. Her expression doesn't change. Not warmth, not surprise, just calculation. "What happened to the gallows?" she asks. You swallow. "Didn't take." She smirks. "Lucky you." They feed you, bathe you, let you collapse in a real a hammock technically, but it feels like heaven. For a while all you do is sleep and wake and sleep again. Elias tells the story of your escape over and over, each time with more flair. You don't correct him, you're too tired to be humble. Eventually Maud invites you to her quarters. It's not fancy, just neat. Charts, knives, a bottle of something aged and amber. She pours 2 fingers into a tin cup and slides it to you without a word. You drink it without asking what it is. It burns the pain out of your throat for the first time in days. "You two," she says, gesturing to you and Elias, "have a choice." You raise an eyebrow. Elias just groans. "I can drop you at Tortuga," she says, "or I can keep you aboard. We've room. You've got skills, and I prefer crew who've stared at a noose and come back swinging." It's tempting. A ship, a job, a second life. Not much to think about, really. But part of you wonders, what's the point? You've been a pirate. You've starved and fought, bled, killed, wept. You've seen men gutted for lies and hanged for truths. You've buried friends, betrayed strangers. You've lived a life most people fear in stories, and you barely lived through it. Do you go back? Do you start over? Or do you stop? That night you sit on the deck alone, the sea stretched out like a road you can't decide to walk down again. The moon is full, the air cool. Behind you, Maud's crew sings quietly, not drunk, not wild, just there, steady, alive. Elias sits beside you. He smells like salt and rum and whatever bruised herbs they use as soap on this boat. "So," he says, "what do we do now?" You shrug. The same thing we've always done. He laughs. Which is what exactly? And you say, keep not dying? That gets a real laugh. A tired one, but real. Historically, some pirates did get second chances, pardons, new ships, new names. Some returned to sea, some retired quietly. Others couldn't stay away and died trying to relive their old glories. The cycle never really ended. It just moved forward. There's a fringe story about a pirate who faked his death at Port Royal, married a widow in Barbados, and spent the rest of his life baking bread. Another tale tells of a woman captain who sailed under a new name for 20 more years before vanishing with her entire crew into a fog. Legends, half-truths, you wonder which version you're stepping into now. Maud lets you stay. No ceremony, no welcome speech. Just a new hammock, a fresh blade and a nod. That's how it works. You're part of the ship now again, but you're not the same. And the sea, as always, is watching. You start calling it the quiet life, but only in your head, and only with the sort of bitter sarcasm that comes from surviving things that should have killed you twice over. Life aboard Maud's ship isn't easy, but it's a long way from the chaos of your last crew. There's no whip crack echoing off the mast. No gambling brawls that end in blood. No stench of rot beneath the deck. Maud runs a tight ship built on rules and respect, and you almost don't know what to do with that. Almost. Your new job is maintenance. Ropes, sails, wood patches. Things you can do quietly away from most people. Elias is still there, of course, now the ship's unofficial quartermaster, though he insists his real job is supervising rum allocation and moral support. The crew likes him. They're wary of you at first. You're the ghost who escaped the noose. You're the one who saw the inside of a navy gallows and walked away. That makes people nervous. Superstitious. Curious. Eventually the stares fade, replaced by something else. Nods. Jokes. Half-shared meals. It's not trust, not yet, but it's close. Weeks pass, then months. You raid a few ships, nothing big. Maud prefers targets with minimal resistance, small merchant sloops, privateers who get too bold. Her goal isn't gold, it's survival. Food, powder, medicine. She avoids navy patrols, cuts deals in hidden coves, trades with locals who don't care what flag you fly as long as you pay. It's less adventure and more logistics. Still, it keeps you afloat. And alive. One night you dock in a tiny port on an unmarked island, just huts, a dock, and a man who sells rum by the barrel. It's your first chance in months to stand on land. Your legs feel like jelly. You nearly fall on your face and Elias laughs so hard he drops his pipe in the sand. You wander into the village and buy a sweet orange with a copper coin. You eat it slowly, sitting on a crate, juice dripping down your chin. It's the best thing you've ever tasted. Historically, most pirates didn't die in battle. They died from disease, starvation, infection. Even successful crews often met their end from a scratch that went septic or a rat bite that turned feverish. You think of all the ways you could have died. Famine, hanging, drowning, fire, gunshot, betrayal. You wonder how many more are waiting. Maud calls a meeting on deck that night. A vote. She's got word of a potential prize, a treasure ship out of Havana, heavy with silver, bound for the Spanish Main. Big risk, big reward. Everyone gets a say. You vote yes, not because you care about the silver, but because part of you wants to feel alive again. To remember what it was like to grip a blade with purpose. The raid is brutal. The ship is guarded. Not by soldiers, but mercenaries, hardened men with cruel smiles and no fear. You take one down by tackling him into the hold, the two of you rolling through gunpowder barrels and broken crates. You don't remember the killing blow, just blood, screaming, and then silence. In the end, you win. Barely. You take the ship, you get the silver. But you lose 4 men. One of them is Elias. Shot through the gut while covering your retreat. You drag him to the deck, screaming for help, but you know. He looks up at you, eyes wide, and says, "You still owe me for that orange." Then he dies. No final speech, no last breath sighing through poetic lips. Just that, and gone. You bury him at sea with the others. Maud says a few words. You say nothing. You can't. Your throat is closed, your eyes are dry, and everything inside you feels like it's caving in. That night, you sit at the bow with Elias's pipe in your hand. It doesn't light anymore. You keep it anyway. There's an old belief that if you die at sea, your soul stays with the ship. You're not sure if it's true, but you swear you hear his laugh sometimes when the wind's just right. Here's a final strange fact. One pirate captain, after losing his entire crew in a storm, sailed alone for 2 years talking to ghosts. People called him mad, but they also say he never lost another battle after that. Sometimes madness is just grief wearing a different coat. You stay aboard Maud's ship for another year. You get stronger, quieter, more respected. One day she asks if you want your own command, a sloop of your own, crew, compass, Riyadh. Freedom. You say no, not because you're afraid, but because you finally learned that freedom isn't found at the helm of a ship. It's found in surviving long enough to choose what happens next. Eventually, you dock at an island far from any navy patrol, far from ports that whisper your name. You disembark. Maud watches without question. She nods once and says, "Don't die stupid. You promise you'll try. You live in a hut near the water now. You fix boats, tell stories, eat fruit. Sometimes someone asks about the rope scar on your neck. You just say, 'It's from when I tried to kiss a navy girl.' That usually gets a laugh. At night you walk the beach. The sea calls, like always, but this time you don't answer. You've had your fill. And that, dear friends, is the story of your horrible, cursed, sweaty, sea-sickened, blade-scarred life as a pirate. You didn't die at sea, or in battle, or on the gallows. You died and came back and kept moving, one splintered day at a time. That's not glory, that's survival, which, in pirate terms, is the same thing. So if you're still awake, congrats. You just lived through something most people wouldn't survive 10 minutes of. If your pillow now feels extra soft, that's because you've earned it. Now close your eyes, breathe in deep, and drift away like a stolen ship into a moonlit cove.